Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Pokemon. Born in a psychic family, I am invincible. Chapter 81. Having 2 extra arms is indeed a huge unique advantage of Machamp. In a battle of the same level, it is very difficult to use 2 arms against 4 arms. This time, Machamp fired with all his strength and quickly defeated Blaziken. Fighting attainments are still a bit poor. As a bystander, Chen-Chi saw it very clearly. Blaziken competed against Machamp entirely by relying on his strong physical fitness and super reaction speed. If you only talk about fighting attainments, he is much worse than Machamp. But polishing the fighting skills was the purpose of Chen-Chi's visit this time. The Machamp in front of him is Blaziken's best training partner and the best coaching teacher. After repelling Blaziken, Machamp stood quietly on the spot, silently watching Blaziken in front of him. Blaziken looked down at the scars all over his body, his eyes flickered, and then he raised his eyes to look at Machamp, and slowly adjusted his breathing. Don't just think about defeating it, but use it as your teacher, from which you can polish your fighting skills. Chen-Chi's voice sounded quietly. Teacher. Blaziken's eyes flickered slightly, his mood gradually stabilized, his eyes froze, and he rushed towards Machamp again. This time, it still uses close combat. 307. As only compared to the last time, it seems less urgent, the attack speed has slowed down, but the number of loopholes has decreased accordingly. Blaziken was at peace, his sky-blue eyes fixed on Machamp, paying close attention to his reaction, the speed of his punches, the movement of his punches. Bang bang bang. Looking at the 2 Pokemon colliding with passion, Chen-Chi nodded in satisfaction. Obviously, Master Ji Yushi didn't think about letting himself pass this test from the very beginning. I have Blaziken, which is powerful against professional-level Pokemon. Even if it is so difficult, it is even more impossible for others to pass. It's just why Master Ji Yushi set up the test. Under my way. Or has Master Ji Yu's instruction already begun? Chen-Chi looked up at Machamp, and said in a low voice, "This Machamp is the first instruction from Master Ji Yushi." Chen-Chi shook his head, throwing away these complicated thoughts, and focused on the battle in front of him. Meadow, Lilu, Medic and Kirlia watched the battle closely, cheering on their Blaziken boss. A moment later, Blaziken and Machamp retreated to the back again, keeping a safe distance, panting heavily, and looking at each other from afar. During several fierce confrontations, Blaziken obviously felt that his fighting level was rapidly improving at a speed visible to the naked eye. Thinking of this, he looked at Machamp with a grateful look. Hoo ha ha. Machamp panted heavily, and looked at Blaziken opposite him with weird eyes. What kind of monster is this? It has not fallen down after fighting for so long. Are you a pro or am I? The Pokemon that came before are not so powerful. At this time, Chen-Chi looked down at the time and said, "The time is almost up, let's settle the battle." Upon hearing this, Machamp glared at Chen-Chi with sharp eyes, and then turned his head to stare at Blaziken. It decided to defeat Blaziken right away and settle the battle once and for all. Chat. Blaziken nodded slightly, his eyes were awe-inspiring, flames spewed from his wrist, his speed increased sharply, and his figure approached Machamp like light in an instant. Machamp didn't rush, his sharp eyes caught the trajectory of Blaziken, paying attention to its every move. In the next second, Blaziken's legs burst into flames, and he kicked Machamp violently. Machamp stood on the spot, motionless as a mountain, his eyes staring like copper bells, and his arms suddenly stretched out, grabbing towards Blaziken's legs. But Blaziken's legs were as fast as lightning, and he dodged Machamp's arms suddenly, and kicked Machamp's chest head-on at the same time. Boom! Even the burly and strong Machamp, after being kicked head-on by Blaziken, the heavy force caused his body to shake slightly, and he took 2 steps back again and again. Blaziken resolutely seized the short moment when Machamp was unstable, jumped forward, his knees glowed white, and hit Machamp's chest again. Boom! Suddenly, Machamp's eyes widened, and he felt a sharp pain spread from his chest to his whole body. At the same time, under the great force of the high jump kick, its chest was slightly dented, and it flew backwards towards the rock wall above its head. Boom! In the next second, Machamp hit the rock wall above his head uncontrollably. The violent collision produced a shock wave, and some small stones suddenly fell from the rock wall. Afterwards, Machamp fell to the ground with a boom, setting off a burst of dust and smoke. Saw. The dust and smoke gradually dissipated. Machamp stood up slowly under Chen Chi's gaze. It was covered in scars all over, and grinned at Blaziken. Fight like this. Chen Chi lost the ability to fight without me, and was slightly startled. Master Ji Yushi really didn't want him to pass the test. Immediately, Chen Chi complained secretly. However, when Machamp stood up straight again, it looked at Blaziken, then took off the golden belt around its waist, and threw it at Blaziken. Immediately afterwards, it gave a slight nod to Blaziken. Well, that's a nod of approval. Chen Chi understood Machamp's meaning. It probably means that you don't need to fight, you have already got my approval, take this golden belt. Ha! Blaziken took the belt, stared at Machamp, and thanked it. Seniors, thank you for your selfless guidance. Machamp felt the faint pain coming from various parts of his body, grinned for a while, and then waved his hand, indicating that Blaziken could leave here. Seeing this, Chen Chi took out a healing spray from his pocket and threw it towards Machamp. You should know how to use this thing, right? Let's go first. Afterwards, Chen Chi waved to Machamp and walked towards the cave with 3 Pokemon. Machamp stared blankly at Chen Chi's back, then picked up the healing spray on the ground, with a big smile on his face. It is much faster to go back than to come in. When you come in, you must always be vigilant and beware of sudden attacks by wild Pokemon. Therefore, it took only 10 minutes for Chen Chi to walk out of the cave. Putting Medig and Kirlia back into the Pokeball, Chen Chi looked up at the sun above his head, and was heading west slowly. Seeing enough time, he and Blaziken headed towards Master Ji Yuzai's residence. At the same time, Master Ji Yushi covered his hands and slapped yawn, then looked up at the sun that was slowly moving westward. It's almost time. How can I comfort this child later? However, since he is the descendant of Old Man Chen, he should have inherited his unyielding and tenaciousness, so there should be no need for consolation. Well, even facing the professional level Machamp, the blow is quite big. As a Pokemon trained by himself, Master Ji Yushi is very aware of Machamp's combat power. Even a group of elite level Pokemon can be beaten down one by one. Let him take a good rest tonight, and start giving him strength tomorrow. Speaking of this, Master Ji Yushi paused, and then muttered, I'm quite curious. I was born in a superpower family, but it's really strange to have subdued fighting Pokemon. Could it be that Psychic has low talent? Still not interested in Psychic Pokemon? Master Ji Yushi secretly speculated for a long time, and suddenly saw 2 small black spots not far away, walking towards him quickly. Master Ji Yushi sat up straight and looked not far away. After he saw the figure of the person coming, he frowned slightly, and then Master Ji Yushi noticed what Blaziken was holding in his hand, and his pupils shrank suddenly. Really let him get the golden belt. Master Ji Yushi muttered in a low voice, then stood up to welcome the returning Chen Chi and Blaziken. Not long after, Chen Chi and Blaziken stood in front of Master Ji Yushi. Master Ji Yushi looked down at the golden belt in Blaziken's hand, and Infernape, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, slowly opened his eyes and glanced at Blaziken casually. At this glance, Blaziken immediately felt a terrifying pressure rushing towards him, and a trace of horror flickered between his brows. Master Ji Yushi, fortunately you have lived up to your fate. Meeting Master Ji Yuzai's strange gaze, Chen Chi took the initiative to speak. Master Ji Yushi put his hands behind his back, looked away, and nodded slightly. Afterwards, he asked slowly, who is the thief who stole my golden belt? Chen Chi replied, it's a Machamp. What strength Machamp? Professional grade. When the words fell, Master Ji Yushi stared straight at Chen Chi, and asked aloud, how did you snatch the golden belt from the professional level Machamp? Hearing this, Chen Chi grinned, beat it. Master Ji Yuzai's turbid eyes suddenly shot out a bright light, his eyes were fixed, and he said in a stern voice, how to defeat it? Chen Chi smiled slightly, glanced at Blaziken beside him, and said, of course I beat it with my fist. Master Ji Yushi didn't comment or nod, he turned his eyes and looked at Blaziken carefully, and then his brows became more and more wrinkled. Soon, he strode up to Blaziken and stared at it. Blaziken's breathing was suffocating, and Master Ji Yushi in front of him was like a ferocious giant beast, giving it a strong sense of oppression, as if he didn't dare to move. After a while, Master Ji Yushi stretched out his hand and pinched Blaziken's wrist, touched its legs, and then stroked his beard and sighed, no wonder. Afterwards, Master Ji Yushi took a step back, looked at Chen Qi, and said firmly, this Blaziken has experienced lightning tempering. When Chen Qi heard it, he secretly thought that Master Ji Yushi had good eyesight, and quickly replied, yes. Where is the lightning? The Electric Valley in Hailong City. Chen Qi answered truthfully. Well, no wonder you can defeat Machamp. Master Ji Yushi nodded lightly, and immediately continued, you have passed the examination. Just as Chen Qi breathed a sigh of relief, Master Ji Yu's voice sounded again. Let this kid make gestures with me. Chen Qi first looked at Master Ji Yushi, then at Blaziken, thought for a moment, and replied, no problem. Naturally, he wouldn't be so stupid as to think that Master Ji Yushi couldn't beat Blaziken, a martial artist with superb martial arts skills. According to Chen Qi's speculation, Master Ji Yushi may want to experience Blaziken's strength for himself, and then give advice according to the specific situation. You go first. Master Ji Yushi stood on the spot with his hands behind his back, his eyes were calm, and he spoke lightly, just like a martial arts master. Chat. Blaziken looked dignified, and the aura emanating from Master Ji Yushi was like a vast ocean, making him extremely cautious. In its perception, Master Ji Yushi is much stronger than the previous Machamp. Chat. Blaziken's eyes froze, and he decided to take the initiative to attack. It slammed the ground down, sprayed dazzling flames from its wrists, jumped out, and arrived in front of the ancient exposure master in an instant. In the next second, it swung its fists out with such a speed that it was tongue-tiring. But under Chen Qi's gaze, Master Ji Yushi faced Blaziken, who came from Sucker Punch with a calm expression. He still had his hands behind his back, his clothes swaying, and then his feet moved, and his body slightly shifted a position. But this position made Blaziken's attack smack down empty, passing Master Ji Yushi. At that moment, Master Ji Yushi touched his fist with his right hand, and struck out from an incredible angle, hitting Blaziken's chest in the next second. Boom! Blaziken's eyes widened suddenly, and he fell backwards meters away and fell heavily to the ground. Looking at this scene, Chen Qi couldn't help swallowing his saliva, and his heart was shaken. What humanoid Pokemon? After a while, Blaziken got up from the ground. Although there was a shallow fist mark on his chest, he didn't feel any pain. Continue. At the same time, Master Ji Yushi smiled all over his face, stretched out his right hand, and hooked his fingers towards Blaziken. Blaziken's face was solemn, and after readjusting his breathing, his eyes fixed, and he attacked Master Ji Yushi again. This time, its eyes were full of fighting spirit, its wrists and legs were sprayed with flames, and it charged in front of Master Ji Yushi between sparks and flints. The pair of fists followed closely, swung out like a Horacio shower, intertwined into an impenetrable net. Close combat. Interesting. The corners of Master Ji Yu's mouth rose slightly, his left hand was behind his back, and he only used his right hand to parry Blaziken's fierce attack. Under Chen Qi's close watch, Master Ji Yushi stood in place from the beginning to the end, his right hand punched at a very slow speed, so slow that even he could capture the trajectory of his movements. But it was such a slow motion that accurately blocked every attack of Blaziken. He stood still, letting Blaziken attack with all his might, and remained motionless. The temperament of a master is undoubtedly revealed. Okay, let's call it a day. Finally, Master Ji Yushi spoke softly. As soon as the words fell, he patted Blaziken on the back of his right palm, causing him to take several steps back. Blaziken's figure swayed. It first stabilized its figure, and then looked at Master Ji Yushi with shocked eyes. With a smile on his face, Master Ji Yushi patted the dust on the clothes with his hands, and said lightly, I probably know its strength. Rest well tonight and get up early tomorrow. You sleep on the first floor, and there are all kinds of food and daily necessities in the room. I'm going out for a while. Afterwards, Master Ji Yushi waved his hand and walked slowly towards the direction of the setting sun. Ah! Puccina Pidion followed behind Master Ji Yushi, barking all the way. Infernape was still sitting cross-legged in the yard, it seemed to have been sitting here most of the day. Chen Qi didn't bother this peak Master Infernape, and walked into the wooden house with Blaziken. A Blaziken that rivals pro-level Pokemon. No wonder you can defeat Machamp. Master Ji Yushi walked slowly on the road with his hands behind his back. After reaching an open area, Master Ji Yushi glanced at the signal tower not far away, and then took out his mobile phone. With the sound of Doduo beeping, the call is connected. "Hello, old man Chen," Master Ji Yushi said carelessly. The other side was silent for a while, and then a steady voice sounded, "What's the matter?" "Your grandson is here with me." Chen Yi was silent again, and replied after a while, "Please take care." Hearing this, Master Ji Yushi smiled, with a bright smile on his face, and then said, "You are a dignified super elite. Why is the Pokemon of the younger generation a Blaziken?" Choosing Pokemon is entirely voluntary. Master Ji Yushi was amazed, and then said, "If you don't want him to worship me as a teacher, I think he has a good talent and is suitable to be my disciple." "Didn't you accept the closed disciples long ago?" Chen Yi asked lightly. "It's a big deal to owe the door again." Master Ji Yushi laughed. "What did he do that you value so much?" Chen Yi didn't answer directly, but asked instead. Upon hearing this, Master Ji Yushi sighed. His elite-level Blaziken defeated the professional-level Machamp. "I've been teaching this Machamp for a long time," he added. "No wonder." Chen Yi nodded thoughtfully, and then continued, "Although his Earl Dervish Pokemon is Blaziken, the latter two are all super-type Pokemon, and they have excellent super power talents." After hearing the words, Master Ji Yushi understood what Chen Yi meant, and repeatedly said with regret, "It's a pity. If you worship me as your teacher, you will become a master trainer within 10 years. Chen Yi chuckled, noncommittal. The two fell into a brief silence. Finally, Master Ji Yushi took the initiative to speak and broke the silence. "How's the situation over there?" Chen Yi was silent for a while, and then replied, "It's pretty stable, everything is under control." "That Pokemon can really make diamonds?" Master Ji Yushi asked curiously. Chen Yi sighed slightly. "If it weren't for the ability to make diamonds, it wouldn't attract so many people to covet them." "That's right." Master Ji Yushi nodded in agreement. Afterwards, Chen Yi said softly, "Actually, this Pokemon is not bad. The main reason is that every time I enter that place, I always feel that there are prying eyes in the dark." Prying eyes. Master Ji Yushi frowned slightly. "It's hard to describe this feeling. Anyway, that place is definitely not as simple as it appears on the surface. You know, ordinary people may not care much about these feelings, but for us, they are very important." Master Ji Yushi nodded in agreement and said, "Just as martial arts have been cultivated to the highest level, the perception has been greatly improved, and you can perceive the gaze from the outside world. Perhaps there are Pokemon secretly watching you. It will always come out." Chen Yi said lightly. "I always feel that recently, more and more weird things have happened in the world, and more gods have appeared." Master Ji Yushi sighed. "The soldiers will block the water and cover it with earth," Chen Yi said calmly. 2. Next day, it was just dawn. Chen Qi got up, and after a simple wash, he walked out of the room. Master Ji Yushi was already practicing boxing against the rising sun, as if he was doing some kind of slow-paced boxing, with his hands slowly swinging. Infernape was still sitting cross-legged on the ground just like yesterday. It's just that at this moment Chen Qi keenly noticed the unusual thing, and Infernape opened and closed his mouth, blowing out a powerful wave of air. Chen Qi retreated to the side, ready to wait for Master Ji Yushi to finish his boxing practice. As a result, Master Ji Yushi stopped his movements, looked at Chen Qi, and said slowly, "How many days are you going to stay here?" Chen Qi heard the words, calculated carefully, and then replied, 5 days. 5 days. Master Ji Yushi nodded, then stroked his beard and asked, "How long has your breeder Blaziken been?" Chen Qi said without thinking, "Exactly 3 months. 3 months. Master Ji Yushi yanked off a beard, his pupils shrank, but he regained his composure in an instant, his eyes flashed, and then said, "Remember, your Earl Dervish Pokemon is Blaziken. So it seems that you are just coming of age." "Yes." Chen Qi blinked. He remembered that he didn't seem to tell Master Ji Yushi that Blaziken was his Earl Dervish Pokemon. Master Ji Yushi suppressed the surprise in his heart, put his hands behind his back, paced back and forth for a while, then looked at Chen Qi and said, "The 5 days are relatively short. Originally, I wanted Blaziken to undergo special training, but now it seems that it won't work." He paused for a while, and then said slowly, "In that case, let's use battle instead of training." Besides, your Blaziken breeder is very good and has no obvious shortcomings. It is most suitable to hone its fighting skills through battles. Besides, your Blaziken probably hasn't mastered true energy yet. Master Gu Shi asked. No, Chen Qi replied. Focus Punch is the ultimate move of the fighting family. There is no such move learning machine in the market. You can only learn it by going to a fighting family or a martial arts school. Yes, this is also one of the important reasons why Chen Qi asked Dad Chen to find a fighting master. It would be great if he could pay a little price to learn Focus Punch. Master Gu Shi nodded and said, I will let Infernape teach it Focus Punch, and I hope I can initially master it within 5 days. We will work hard, Chen Qi said in a deep voice. It's so good. Master Gu Shi stroked his beard, and then said lightly, let's go have breakfast first. After breakfast, today's battle will begin. After breakfast, Chen Qi and Blaziken came to the yard, where Master Gu Shi was already waiting. Put this on it. Master Gu Shi threw the 4 weight bags on the ground. Chen Qi walked over and weighed the weight bag. His complexion changed slightly for a moment, it was extraordinarily heavy. Some time ago, Chen Qi originally wanted to use the weight bag to train Blaziken, but Chu Wai suggested that he should use the weight bag under the coaching of professionals, which is safer. So this matter dragged on for a few days, but Master Gu Shi took the initiative to take out the weight bag. I didn't expect Master Gu Shi to keep pace with the times. Chen Qi muttered secretly. Blaziken walked over and put the weight bag on his wrist and calf respectively. After putting on the weight bag, his complexion changed slightly, and his walking posture became a little weird. Master Gu Shi stroked his beard and said, Blaziken is good at boxing and kicking, so these 2 parts are the key training parts. Wearing a weight bag for a long time can effectively improve muscle strength. During these 5 days, you must wear the weight bag at all times and cannot take it off. Call. Blaziken nodded. Master Gu Shi hummed lightly, and then said, of course, if conditions permit, you can continue to wear it after you go back. The longer the time, the more effective it will be. When the voice fell, Master Gu Shi walked slowly towards the path directly in front of the yard with his hands behind his back, and said, come on, come with me, today's training has begun. Chen Qi and Blaziken hurriedly took steps to keep up with Master Gu Shi. Due to wearing a weight bag, Blaziken is now struggling to walk and has an awkward posture, and its proud bounce ability is severely limited. Chen Qi understands that this is a normal phenomenon, and it will take a period of time to get used to before returning to the previous contest condition. Master Gu Shi walked very slowly, as if giving time for Blaziken to get used to the weight bag. When Blaziken's footsteps became more stable and his walking speed became faster and faster, Master Gu Shi also gradually accelerated his pace. I don't know how long it has passed, the sun in the sky gradually hangs above the head. Fortunately, it is October, and the temperature has gradually dropped. Although the sun shines on the earth, it is not too hot. Master Gu Shi in front finally stopped. Seeing this, Chen Qi and Blaziken also stopped in place. Blaziken panted slightly. After walking this distance, it has gradually adapted to the 4 weight bags on its body, and it will not affect its actions. But it will definitely make its contest condition slip, there is no doubt about it. Chen Qi looked up. Hey, isn't this the cave from yesterday? At that moment, a familiar figure with a strong figure came out of the cave. It was yesterday's professional level Machamp. It quickly walked up to Master Gu Shi and nodded at him. Master Gu Shi nodded slightly, then turned to face Chen Qi, coughed dryly, and said solemnly, I taught it a lesson last night, and now it has decided to reform itself and become Blaziken's training partner. Quote. Ah, Chen Qi smiled secretly, but nodded with a straight face. Okay, this Machamp is very powerful, and must have been instructed by an expert. Of course. Master Gu Shi heard the words and replied without hesitation, but seeing Chen Qi watching him closely, he hurriedly said, it's a waste of time, let them start directly. Okay. Chen Qi retreated silently to the corner, leaving enough space for Machamp and Blaziken. What? Machamp and Blaziken looked at each other from a distance. It remembered the scene of yesterday's battle, and its eyes could not help but burst into fighting spirit, and it roared in sleep. Blaziken's expression was particularly dignified. Machamp and its combat power itself were on par with it. Today, He was wearing a weight bag again, so he might be hard to beat. It is more careful, more cautious. Under the watchful eyes of Chen Qi and Grandmaster, the battle started quickly. Blaziken stepped on ground, and a flamethrower slammed from his wrist, burning ground to black, and spark rushed in front of Machamp. But Blaziken obviously felt that due to the weight bag on his body, his speed was not as good as before, and he was a little slow. Machamp's combat power itself is about the same as Blaziken's. Its eyes froze, and it keenly sensed the slight difference. With a grin, it punched out with both fists, and swung dozens of punches in an instant. Blaziken resisted with all his strength, but it was because of the small gap brought by the weight bag that he retreated steadily and was always at a disadvantage. Master Ji Yushi stood beside Chen Qi, watching every movement of Blaziken intently, nodding from time to time. A moment later, Machamp and Blaziken have been fighting fiercely for several rounds, and Blaziken has been suppressed by Machamp from the beginning to the end, and there is no chance of counterattack. Boom! After another passionate collision, Blaziken retreated several meters away. While panting heavily, it raised its eyes and stared at Machamp opposite. In its feel, Machamp really seems to be invulnerable, with 4 arms advancing simultaneously from 4 angles, without any flaws. Machamp is like this, Master Ji Yushi suddenly said. In the same level of confrontation, its 4 arms occupy too much advantage and are invulnerable, making rival unable to seize any opportunities. Blaziken is now carrying a heavy bag, the contest condition is down, and the 50-50 situation is completely tilted towards Machamp. Chen Qi subconsciously asked, then how to break the situation? Master Ji Yushi chuckled, shook his head and said, why do you want to break the game? For Blaziken at this time, Machamp is the best teacher, helping it completely fit into the weight bag. Blaziken can beat Machamp when it fits right into the bag. At that time, the first stage of training will be over. At this stage, I estimate that it will be over in 2 days at most. Master Ji Yushi said again. Hearing these words, Chen Qi nodded thoughtfully, and then asked curiously, Master Ji Yushi, what is the second stage of training? Master Ji Yushi replied with a smile. The second phase of training is carried out simultaneously with the first phase, which is to allow Blaziken to initially master Focus Punch. When these 2 stages of training are completed, it is the third stage, that is, the final training. Master Ji Yushi turned his head to look at Chen Qi, his eyes were deep, and he said slowly, challenge the totem of this forest. Then, unknowingly, the time came to the afternoon. Master Ji Yushi moved 2 chairs from nowhere, and sat down with Chen Qi. Puccina also ran over, wandering around Master Ji Yushi for a while. Raihuichuan stuck out his tongue and watched the battle in the open space in front of him. So, learning martial arts is a long and lengthy process, and you have to start practicing from a young age. You are already too late. Master Ji Yushi lay on the chair, shaking his head for a while. Even if you are studying now, unless you are a 1 in a million martial arts prodigy, you will be able to achieve something. Otherwise, Master Ji Yushi chuckled, and said, I'll only learn some 3-legged cat kung fu. These words completely shattered Chen Qi's dream of practicing martial arts. Just as Master Ji Yushi said, if you want to acquire a good martial art, you must study hard and practice hard for decades, and you can't just do it one day. Even the world-renowned martial arts masters will continue to practice martial arts every day, no matter whether it is severe cold or scorching heat. Chen Qi admits that he can't do this. But it's okay, I still practice traditional martial arts in what age, and now psychic is popular. What? Suddenly, Master Ji Yushi raised his eyes to look at Blaziken, and let out a little surprise. Chen Qi followed the prestige, and his eyes fell on Blaziken. Compared to the morning, Blaziken's attack at this time is more natural and coherent, without any signs of awkwardness. And its movements are getting lighter and lighter, making it easier to face Machamp's attacks. What surprised Chen Qi even more was that the way Blaziken evaded attacks had changed significantly. In the past, it always used a large range of motion to avoid attacks, but now Blaziken's range of motion to avoid attacks is very small, just like how Master Ji Yushi avoided Blaziken's attack range yesterday. Not bad, very smart. Master Ji Yushi looked at this scene, a faint smile appeared on his face, and a trace of satisfaction flashed in his eyes. The smaller the range of movement, the more energy you can save, and you can reduce the flaws, and at the same time launch counterattacks instantly. Chen Qi didn't make a sound, staring at the battle in the open space without blinking. Blaziken's momentum is getting stronger and stronger, and the flames on his wrist are blazing, but it uses fighting moves from the beginning to the end. With a sweep of its body, it took the initiative to rush towards Machamp. After Machamp reacted, Blaziken threw an uppercut. Boom! The uppercut hit Machamp's chin, and the huge force made him fly upside down several meters in an instant, before hitting the ground heavily. Machamp's struggle got up, and after stabilizing his figure, he let out a furious roar. Blaziken ignored it, stepped forward, and approached Machamp in an instant. A high jump kick struck. Roar! Bet! Machamp stretched out his hands suddenly, clamping Blaziken's knee tightly, and fell into a brief stalemate. But a huge force suddenly rushed over. Machamp's face was ferocious, his veins were exposed, and his hands were out of strength. Boom! Chen Qi looked up and down. Machamp flew up and down. Under Blaziken's sudden outburst, Machamp couldn't resist, and eventually his eyes turned into circles. Master Ji Yushi stood up, walked quickly in front of Blaziken, and repeatedly praised, "Not bad, it only took 1 day to fully adapt to the weight bag. Your talent and hard work have exceeded my expectations." Master Ji Yushi praised without hesitation. "Have a good rest tonight and start learning Focus Punch tomorrow." The next day, in the familiar yard, Master Ji Yushi stood in front of Chen Qi and Blaziken. To master Focus Punch, the first step is to achieve focus energy. Master Ji Yushi spoke very slowly. Focus energy. Chen Qi was slightly taken aback, secretly thinking about the difference between Celestic's concentration and concentration. The so-called focus energy, in simple terms, is to concentrate the mind and bring the whole body to one point. Then, punch out. After the words fell, Master Ji Yushi looked at Infernape beside him, and said, "Come and demonstrate." Ah cha! Infernape nodded slightly, his gaze fixed, focusing on energy first, then concentrating, and finally punched out with a huge momentum, and the air wave swept across. Master Ji Yushi stroked his beard, and said, "Actually, the steps are very simple: focus energy, concentrate, and punch. The difficulty lies in how to achieve the first 2 points in the battle. In a match, the situation changes rapidly, and rival obviously won't give you focus energy time to concentrate. Therefore, if you want to master Focus Punch, the premise is to focus on focus energy in the shortest possible time. Once you can do that, you can easily master Focus Punch." But Master Ji Yushi knew in his heart that it would be as difficult as climbing the sky to achieve this. If you want to concentrate on focus energy, you must first have a peaceful mind and no waves, but how can you easily achieve this in battle? It takes at least a month for ordinary Pokemon to master Focus Punch. Although Blaziken has excellent qualifications, it should take several days. Blaziken should start with the simplest practice first, and try focus energy without being disturbed. Master Ji Yushi suggested. Chen Qi's eyes flickered slightly. He turned his head to look at Blaziken, who was eager to try, and felt that this steps should be very simple for Blaziken. Focus energy is actually the first expanded version of meditation, with an extra focus energy process, and the rest of the steps are the same. During this period of time in the Xuanxin Dojo, although Blaziken couldn't concentrate at any time and anywhere like Kirlia, ordinary concentration was not difficult for him. As a result, Blaziken focused his gaze, and first tried focus energy to gather the chi in his body at one point. This step is fairly simple, and it's easy to do. The second step is concentrating. Blaziken recalled the contest condition when he was concentrating in the Xuanxin Dojo, letting his mind sink slowly, and the mind became more and more peaceful under this contest condition. In the next second, its temperament changed, and it succeeded in concentrating on it. In the last step, Blaziken swung a punch loudly, and suddenly the wind howled from the fist, and the aura was mighty. Master Ji Yushi. He turned his head to look at Chen Qi, and asked aloud, "Has Blaziken ever done related exercises?" Chen Qi answered truthfully, "I learned to meditate in the Xuanxin Dojo." No wonder. Master Ji Yushi muttered secretly, and then said, "It seems that we can speed up the progress. While Blaziken can already use Focus Punch without interruption, it's just the first step. Next, let Blaziken repeat the steps of focus energy to try to achieve the fastest speed." Master Ji Yushi said in a deep voice. Okay, Chen Qi nodded. So on this day, Blaziken did not fight, did not train, and repeated a step from morning till night. Focus energy, concentration, focus energy, concentration. Afternoon of the third day, BCAC. Master Ji Yushi looked at Blaziken and finally nodded. Okay, we can stop now. Hearing this, Blaziken let out a long sigh of relief. The repetitive and boring steps were finally over. Now that you can do the focus energy in the shortest possible time, the next step is to do it in combat. Afterwards, Master Ji Yushi called the best partner who was diligent and conscientious. My requirement is that in every confrontation, in addition to using the usual moves against Machamp, you should also use Focus Punch as much as possible. Understand, chat? Blaziken nodded heavily. Then, Blaziken started to take the beating again. Because there is such a rigid requirement, it is tantamount to putting a shackle on Blaziken and giving Machamp an opportunity to take advantage of it. Blaziken not only has to seize the opportunity between battles, but also to achieve focus energy in the case of external interference, which is very difficult. Therefore, Blaziken was repeatedly injured and frustrated in the battle with Machamp. Master Ji Yushi sat at the side leisurely, pointing aloud at the same time. Chen Qi couldn't help asking a question that had puzzled him for a long time. Master Ji Yushi, why do you still choose to give pointers when you have lived in seclusion in the mountains? According to Chen Qi's understanding, every year, a trainer Norman would go all the way to find Master Ji Yushi and ask for advice. Upon hearing this, Master Ji Yushi chuckled and said, anyway, idleness is idleness, why don't you find something for yourself to do? Besides, if you want to achieve what you want in the future, I will have a good face when I say it. Chen Qi grinned. I see. Master Ji Yushi looked up at Chen Qi, and asked aloud, how is it? Do you have any plans to participate in the World Martial Arts Association in the future? Hearing this question, Chen Qi turned his head and glanced at Blaziken, and answered truthfully, yes. Master Ji Yushi nodded and said, remember to win a championship. Immediately afterwards, Master Ji Yushi shook his head again and said, but the champion gold belt of the World Martial Arts Association is just like that, nothing rare. Of course you don't think it's unusual, after all, there are only 2 in the house. Chen Qi complained secretly. Afterwards, Master Ji Yushi sighed slightly. Your Blaziken has excellent aptitude, and it can even be called rare in your life. If this contest condition breeder continues, elite is expected. Master Ji Yushi shook his head lightly, his eyes flickering. Elite. In fact, in all fairness, Chen Qi doesn't have much feeling for elite. After all, his grandfather is a genuine elite. It can be seen that Papa Chen's Alakazam has been trapped at the peak of the gymnasium level for several years. Master Xuanmu has been trying to reach the elite level for several years without success, and the same is true for the Master Ji Yushi in front of him. He understands that for 99% of trainers in the world, elite is out of reach and can only be seen from afar. Thoughts flashed. Chen Qi asked curiously again, Master Ji Yushi, are you going to stay here forever? Master Ji Yushi stroked his beard and replied, old man, I am alone. If there are no special circumstances, I will definitely stay here forever. After the words fell, Master Ji Yushi looked at the distant mountains and said in a low voice, but I always feel that this kind of comfortable life won't last long. Huh, Chen Qi looked puzzled. Master Ji Yushi turned his head, stared at Chen Qi, and said with a big laugh, it's not a big deal, it's just that gods have appeared frequently in recent years, and I always feel that this is not a good omen. Hearing this, Chen Qi frowned slightly, but did not make a sound. Gods, that is, beasts, legendary Pokemon, terrifying existences with unpredictable power. In the long process of human civilization, there has never been a lack of gods. They either create disasters, disrupt the world, or save disasters and sprinkle grace. It's just that with the rapid development of society, the connections between regions are getting closer and closer, and there are fewer and fewer traces of gods, only in places that are inaccessible. Of course, these are historical records. How much credibility, Chen Qi did not know. However, in recent years, the frequency of appearance of gods has become higher and higher. Some people witnessed 2 figures, one blue and one red, in the waters of the south of the Yangtze River, and they disappeared in a flash. Some people heard the faint dragon chant in the dark cave, past and future. Seeing Chen Qi's thoughtful face, Master Ji Yuxi laughed and said, "Now you don't have to think about these things, it's still far away from you. It's just that you have to remember that the figures of the gods are actually very close to us, and they often hide in unknown corners, watching us secretly." When Chen Qi heard the words, he always felt that Master Ji Yuxi meant something. But as Master Ji Yuxi said, it is useless to think about these things with his current strength, and it is king to concentrate on improving his strength. At the same time, in the wooden house behind the two, there was a slight space ripple, and a pink petite Pokemon emerged. Its tail is thin and long, and it is triangular in shape due to the sky's blue eyes. This Pokemon quietly landed on the table in the wooden house, and picked up a tree fruit. Seeing that no one had noticed, Pokemon secretly smiled, circled twice in midair, and then flew out of the wooden window. Pokemon first looked at Chen Qi and Master Ji Yuxi who were talking to each other, and then at Blaziken and Machamp who were fighting fiercely. While nibbling on the fruit, it stared intently at the fierce battle. Unknowingly, Pokemon finished eating the berry, touched his belly with his hands, and showed a satisfied expression on his face. Pokemon squinted his eyes, happily flying in midair. Suddenly, Infernape, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, suddenly opened his eyes and looked in the direction of Pokemon. The breeze blew by, and there was a piece of calm. A trace of doubt flashed between Infernape's brows, and then slowly closed his eyes. Behind a thick tree, the figure of Pokemon gradually appeared. It poked its head out, peeked at Infernape who had closed his eyes, and let out a long sigh of relief. Immediately afterwards, Pokemon slowly flew up soaring in the sky, and his figure became more and more blurred until finally disappearing. Master Ji Yuxi suddenly hummed lightly. Chen Qi cast a puzzled look. Master Ji Yuxi narrowed his eyes, glanced back and forth, then shook his head and said, "It's okay." The feeling of being watched in the dark. On October 10th, the weather was fine. The breeze is warm and the sun is just right. Outside the cabin, two unexpected guests came. This is a man and a woman. The man is about 40 years old, with a short cut, a calm complexion, and a burly figure. From a distance, it looks like an iron tower. The girl has an immature complexion and looks at most 20 years old, but she is tall, about 1.7 meters tall. He has short black hair, healthy complexion, and slightly brownish skin. The lower abdominal muscles of the small man's waist held tightly by the tights are faintly visible, and the strong muscles on the calf are very conspicuous. As expected of Master Ji Yuxi's residence. Good mountains, good water and beautiful scenery. The older man looked around and nodded frequently. The short-haired woman glanced at him lightly, moved her lips, and asked, "Father, where is Master Ji Yuxi?" The older man looked at the cabin not far away, touched his chin, and guessed, "Master Ji Yuxi, maybe he hasn't woken up yet. Let's go to Master Ji Yuxi." The two walked forward quickly, and soon stood in the yard in front of the cabin. The yard is very empty, only one Puccina is lazily basking in the sun. The older man glanced at the closed door, and said in a low voice, "Look, I just said that Master Ji Yuxi hasn't rested yet." Then he went on to say, "Let's just wait here for a while." The short-haired woman nodded lightly, then looked around for a while, walked up to Puccina, squatted down, and stretched out her hand to scratch the wolf dog's neck. Seeing the joyful expression on Puccina's face, the short-haired woman squinted her eyes slightly, with a slight smile on her face. "Daughter." The older man moved a bench, sat next to the short-haired woman, and said, "This time, Norman came all the way to the imperial capital to ask Master Ji Yuxi, you must study hard." The short-haired woman didn't change her face, she had heard these words countless times along the way. "Master Ji Yuxi is a highly respected fighting master. Your father and I have been taught by him before, and then suddenly realized, slowly become the current fighting gym master. Your talent is higher than mine. If you get some guidance from Master Ji Yuxi, not far away, at least you can get good results in the freshman exchange competition that will start soon." Hearing this, the short-haired woman glanced at him faintly, and said quietly, "I came here for this. And if you didn't delay for a long time, I would have come here." The older man smiled awkwardly. "Who told me I was too busy a while ago?" Afterwards, he coughed dryly, waved his hands and said, "It's okay, I'll stay here for a few days this time, and we'll talk about it after finishing the freshman exchange competition." Master Ji Yushi sees how talented you are, and will definitely let you come again next time. The short-haired woman chuckled, but did not respond. The two were silent for a moment. The short-haired woman suddenly remembered something, and asked aloud, I heard that Master Ji Yushi will set up a test. Yes. The older man nodded first, and then said carelessly, it's okay, your Pokemon has already broken through to the elite level, it's just a small test. It must be easy. The short-haired woman was noncommittal, but silently guessed what test Master Ji Yushi would set. Among the students of the same class at South Sichuan University, your current strength should rank first, right? The older man asked curiously again. However, without waiting for the short-haired woman to answer, he muttered to himself, it should be said, after all, there are very few trainers who can own elite-level Pokemon at this point in time. The short-haired woman shook her head lightly, and replied, Father, there are people out there. Of course I know this truth. The older man grinned, and continued, but with your strength, even in Imperial University or Modu University, you are a genius among geniuses. Isn't that what they called you since childhood? Gong Ruonin, a genius fighting girl. It's just a false name. Gong Ruonin said calmly. Gong Hong smiled and said, it is indeed a false name, but everyone in the world pursues false fame. If you become a fighting master in the future, I can also be called the father of a generation of fighting masters by others. The two chatted in low voices for a while, until about half an hour later, Gong Hong glanced at the time, and muttered in a low voice, no, it's almost 11 o'clock, why hasn't Master Yin got up yet? Gong Ruonin's eyes flickered, and he guessed, perhaps Master Ji Yushi got up and went out early. It's not impossible. Gong Hong stood up and wanted to see the situation inside the room through the window, but the room was completely covered by curtains. Gong Ruonin ignored Gong Hong, touched Puccina's head instead, and said softly, little guy, do you know where Master Ji Yushi has gone? Ah, hearing this, Puccina kept barking in the northwest direction. Seeing this, Gong Ruonin's eyes lit up. Originally, it was just a whim, but I didn't expect that this little guy really seemed to understand what he said. Mayahiro noticed this and looked down at Puccina. Little guy, can you take us to find Master Ji Yushi? Gong Ruonin blinked and said softly. Ah! Puccina first yelled at Gong Ruonin twice, then stepped forward and ran towards the northwest. Go, follow it, Gong Hong said. Puccina didn't run fast. While running, she looked back from time to time, as if she was afraid of being lost. This little guy underestimates us. Gong Hong laughed. As the head of the fighting gym in Xuanbei City, who doesn't know his name, Mayahiro? Seeing that the two were following closely behind her, Puccina sped up her speed. Gong Hong didn't change his expression during the running, and even turned his head to look at Gong Ruonin, reminding him, be polite and be positive in front of Master Ji Yushi later. Gong Ruonin nodded slightly. I don't know how long they ran, but the scenery in front of them became more and more open, and an open space appeared in front of the two of them. Gong Hong looked around and saw a familiar figure standing in front of him. He was about to shout out, but he saw a young man standing beside Master Ji Yushi, who was engaged in a fierce battle in the open space. Master Ji Yushi and the young man were watching the battle. In an instant, Gong Hong understood the situation in front of him, so he slowed down his pace slowly without making a sound. Master Ji Yushi glanced at Puccina, who came out from behind. He smiled and didn't turn his head, just said to himself, don't make a sound. Hearing this, Chen Qi looked slightly puzzled, and then caught sight of the two people walking slowly. Gong Hong and Gong Ruonin walked in front of Master Ji Yushi, and then made a fist cup salute respectfully, and then stood in a corner to watch the battle in the open space. Elite Blaziken, Professional Grade Holicha. Looking at the two Pokemon in the open space, Gong Hong frowned slightly, and a doubt appeared in his heart. One level apart, how do these two Pokemon fight together? And, it looks evenly matched. Holicha is a bird-shaped Pokemon with colorful feathers and a teal mask-like pattern on its face. Although Holicha is petite, he is a fighting master, fighting Machamp and Hariyama evenly. Besides, as the head of the fighting gym, Gong Hong could tell at a glance that this Holicha breeder was very good, with sharp eyes, and he could see that he had experienced battles of all sizes. This kind of Pokemon is very difficult to deal with, and it is often difficult to find an opponent at the same level. But even then, it's only on par with the elite Blaziken. Is this person also here to seek advice from Master Gu Shi? Which Pokemon is his? Doubts popped up in his mind one after another. Gong Hong remained calm and watched the battle in front of him quietly. Gong Ruonin watched quietly for a while, then took a Pokeball from her waist, white light bloomed, and a Pokemon appeared beside her. This Pokemon is blue and black and majestic, with a thorn on the back of the hand and a thorn on the chest, a thin upper body and a strong lower body. Lucario, watch carefully, Gong Ruonin said softly. Lucario nodded lightly, his eyes focused, carefully watching the battle in front of him. Chen Qi glanced curiously. Pokemon. Lucario fighting Steel. Ability. Indomitable Heart. Qualification. Elite. Level. LV30 Elite. Lucario who just broke through to Elite. Lucario, bird Pokemon, handsome in appearance, loyal and reliable, ranks among the top 3 most popular Pokemon every year. Chen Qi looked at Lucario, and then turned his attention to the battle in front of him. This is the 5th and last day of studying with Master Gu Shi. The day before, Blaziken had basically mastered Focus Punch and managed to use it smoothly in battle. And today is the time to test the training results of the past few days. This professional level Holicha, according to the ancient exposure master, is the strongest in this forest. It likes to fight very much. Once received a little coaching from Master Gu Shi, Covet fought against the strong. In order to face Holicha with the best contest condition, Blaziken removed the weight bag and adjusted his energy to the peak. Clearing. The 2 Pokemon have already fought several times, and both have obvious scars on their bodies. They keep a safe distance, each panting heavily. Suddenly, Holicha's eyes were serious, and it rushed towards Blaziken at an astonishing speed, its wings swaying in the wind behind it. It was very fast, it rushed to Blaziken almost instantly, its palms turned into sharp knives, and slashed towards Blaziken violently. Blaziken stood still on the spot, its eyes were sharp, and it would not evade Holicha's attack, and its palms also turned into hand knives, facing it head-on. Boom! Suddenly, the 2 Pokemon collided fiercely, and the orange eyes and the sky looked at each other. Bang! 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 In the next second, the 2 Pokemon raised their palms together, fisting each other. Although Blaziken has a significant height advantage, Holicha is exceptionally flexible, like a slippery little loach, making Blaziken several times of smackdown empty. Suddenly, Holicha circled behind Blaziken with agility, and swung his claws. Just. Blaziken yelped in pain, but it forcibly held back the pain, turned around quickly, kicked Holicha head on with both legs. Bang! Bang! In an instant, 2 kicks hit Holicha's abdomen, and Holicha flew upside down like a kite with a broken string. But Holicha turned around in midair, flapped his wings, and was actually suspended in midair, and then landed on a big tree. Afterwards, it took a deep breath, its eyes were sharp, and its momentum was rising steadily, as if it was brewing some kind of trick. It's Sky Attack, Gong Hong said softly. Gong Ruonin nodded thoughtfully, and immediately stared at Blaziken in front of her, expecting its response. She saw it clearly. Although this Blaziken is only an elite level, it has professional level combat power, so it can leapfrog against wrestling. Eagle Man. Clearing. Blaziken also took a deep breath, closed his eyes, his mind quickly sank, and his mind was calm. In the next second, it suddenly opened its eyes. At this moment, the breeze blew gently, and an invisible aura circulated on the field. Blaziken focus energy and concentration were completed in one go, and immediately clenched his fists, raised his eyes, and looked at Holicha, who was covered in a touch of green, and rushed towards him. All of a sudden, it burst out with all its strength, strong flames were sprayed out from its wrists and feet, and it punched loudly. This punch is called Focus Punch. Immediately, the mighty Focus Punch and Sky Attack collided with each other, the airwaves rolled over, the wind tore apart, and the terrifying shock waves spread layer by layer in all directions. Stone chips flew across, leaves fell, and the wind howled. Looking at the scene in front of her, Gong Ruonin's complexion changed slightly, letting the strong wind blow her hair. The tsunami in her heart was getting higher and higher. Elite level Blaziken combat power. It's so outrageous. On the contrary, Gong Hong obviously had a real temperament, and directly complained. Saw. The shock wave gradually dissipated, and the scene on the open space came into everyone's eyes. Holicha was covered in cuts and bruises, and he collapsed on the ground powerlessly, with circles in his eyes. Blaziken gasped and staggered, then stood up straight again, looking down at the fainted Holicha. Finally, Blaziken let out a long sigh of relief, with a satisfied smile on his face. Very good. At that moment, Master Ji Yu's eyes applause sounded, breaking the dead normal's silence. Ji Yu Shi looked loudly at Blaziken first, then at Chen Qi, and said, "Congratulations, you can come out of the mountain for a while. This Blaziken is actually his." Hearing these words, Gong Ruonin was slightly shocked. This Blaziken's combat power that can leapfrog challenges is really rare, at least she has never heard that an elite Pokemon can beat a professional Pokemon. Sure enough, there are people beyond people, and there is a sky beyond the sky. I just don't know what age is Chen Qi, who looks about my age, older or younger than her. Gong Ruonin is not stupid enough to judge a person's age by his face. Some people's faces look small, while others' faces look big. Unless you are a professional, it is difficult to judge. Thinking for a moment, Master Ji Yu's voice sounded again. During these 5 days, Blaziken has made great progress. Remember to continue to wear the weight bag and practice focus punch when you go back. Master Ji Yu Shi put his hands behind his back, his clothes swaying, and said lightly, "Remember, the only way to improve your strength is to persist in training. There is a note on the table on the first floor, which contains some suggestions for Blaziken's follow-up training, and you take it away." After saying this, he nodded slightly to Chen Qi, with a satisfied smile on his face. "You are a very talented child, and Blaziken's qualifications are even more unique." Hearing these words, Gong Hong widened his eyes, and his mind was shocked. He had studied with Master Ji Yu Shi for a period of time, and he knew that Master Ji Yu Shi was very demanding and would rarely take the initiative to praise him. Extremely talented and unique, he weighs a lot. He secretly sighed. I don't know who this person is. He was praised so much by Master Ji Yu Shi. It makes sense, though, that elite-level Blaziken beat pro-level Holicha like nothing you've seen before. Some thoughts flashed in my mind, but Master Ji Yu's voice continued. I hope to see you at the World Martial Arts Conference. Will do. Hearing this, Chen Qi nodded slightly, with a slight smile on his face. Master Ji Yu Shi hummed lightly, then waved his hand, saying let's go. Quote, "Thank you, Master, for your guidance during this time." Chen Qi lowered his eyes and made a clasping salute. Chat. Blaziken stood beside Chen Qi, lowered his head, and thanked Master Ji Yu Shi. Master Ji Yu Shi smiled lightly at the thank you for one person and one favor. He stroked his beard, and said, "Go." This time, Chen Qi nodded slightly, ignoring Gong Hong and Gong Ruonin, who cast curious eyes, and walked towards the cabin with Blaziken. 5 days passed quickly, and he was eager to return to civilized society, and at the same time, he was making final preparations before the freshman exchange game. Gong Hong and the two watched Chen Qi's figure drift away, and then Gong Hong couldn't wait to come to Master Ji Yu Shi, and asked curiously, "Master, who is this little brother?" Master Ji Yu Shi replied, "The old man is a descendant." Seeing the thoughtful expression on Gong Hong's face, Master Ji Yu Shi added, "If you meet him in the future, you can establish a good relationship with him. There are all benefits and no harm." Hearing this, Gong Hong's eyes flashed, and he immediately realized that this person's identity was very special, so he hurriedly replied, "Thank you for your guidance, Master." Afterwards, Gong Hong said again, "Master, this is my daughter. She has been interested in fighting since she was a child. She just became a trainer this year. I hope you will give me some advice." "You just became a trainer again." Master Ji Yu Shi looked at Gong Ruonin and Lucario beside him, and nodded slightly. Hearing these words, Gong Ruonin was slightly startled, and immediately understood what Master Ji Yu Shi meant. The person who just left also just became a trainer. Ignoring Gong Ruonin, whose complexion changed slightly, Master Ji Yu Shi pondered for a moment, and then said, "This Lucario is the Pokemon that needs to be pointed out." "Yes, Master." Gong Ruonin nodded. Master Ji Yu Shi nodded, then stroked his beard and said, "A few days ago, a thief stole my golden belt, and it seemed to be placed in a cave not far away. Go and get it for me." Chen Qi and Blaziken quickly returned to the cabin, packed their luggage, and took the note on the table. Taking a last look at the nearby scenery, Chen-Chi took Blaziken back into the Pokeball. Have a good rest. After 5 days of non-stop training day and night, Blaziken is now physically and mentally exhausted and needs a good rest. Of course, it also gained a lot, not only learned the ultimate fighting skill, Focus Punch, but also polished the fighting skills, and the fighting attainments improved linearly. In terms of combat power alone, Blaziken is much stronger than it was 5 days ago. The current Blaziken can easily defeat Machamp, still wearing a weight bag. Thoughts flashed, Chen-Chi raised his hand and threw a Pokeball. White light bloomed, and Kirlia stood quietly in place. By the way, Kirlia should also evolve, right? Looking at Kirlia standing in front of him, Chen-Chi touched his chin and muttered in a low voice. As soon as the words fell, Kirlia was enveloped by a burst of dazzling white light. Seeing this, Chen-Chi's face froze, and after a while, he muttered, "You can say what you say, right?" The bright light of evolution shrouded Kirlia, and its aura began to rise steadily. At the same time, its body changed significantly, with a taller body and slender limbs. Finally, the light of evolution gradually dissipated, and the evolved Gardevoir appeared in front of Chen-Chi. Gardevoir's blue hair was swaying, his body was covered in a white dress, his posture was elegant and noble, and his crystal red eyes were quietly looking at Chen-Chi. Super Queen Gardevoir, come on. After evolving into Gardevoir, the body grows stronger again, future sight becomes instinctive, and can even distort space with spiritual power to create small black holes. The most important thing is that Gardevoir has changed from a young girl to a royal sister, dressed in pure white, full of mature charm. From a little girl to a little girl, from a little girl to a royal sister, Gardevoir has transformed again and again, changing her image time and time again. The Gardevoir white dress moves in the breeze, like a noble lady stepping out of a palace, her every move is elegant and high-sounding. Congratulations, you have finally evolved. Chen-Chi looked at Gardevoir in front of him and congratulated him. Since then, both Blaziken and Gardevoir have evolved to their final form. I won't say who hasn't finally evolved yet. Well, a Violite can be given to Metang. Chen-Chi thought to himself. After Blaziken evolved, a Violite was given to Gardevoir, and now it will fall into Metag's hands. Let's go and test your current strength. Chen-Chi smiled. Operator. Gardevoir walked lightly beside Chen-Chi, lowering his eyes from time to time, looking at his current appearance. Not long after, the first wild Pokémon blocking the way appeared. This is a Pokémon that looks exactly like a monkey, with a purple body and 2 long tails. Pokémon. Ambipom, normal. Ability. Technical Master. Qualification. Gym. Level. LV35, Elite. At this time, this Ambipom is jumping back and forth among the big trees with its 2 tails, and its posture is vigorous and flexible. Immediately, it jumped down from a branch, and its 2 long tails shot towards Gardevoir from a long distance away. Facing this swift and violent attack, Gardevoir's eyes were very calm. It folded its hands in front of its chest, its figure flickered, and disappeared in place. Ambipom's attack then fell through, and it stopped in place, looking for Gardevoir's figure back and forth. The figure of Gardevoir appeared in the corner out of nowhere, its eyes glowed with a faint purple light, and the super energy fluctuations were released, and the tyrannical aura was undoubtedly revealed. Immediately afterwards, a substantial purple light hits Ambipom directly. The thought wave accurately hits Ambipom, rushing directly into his mind, stirring the nerves, impacting the mind, and the pain spreads from the inside out. Ambipom suddenly had a splitting headache, it had a ferocious face, and let out a sharp growl. In the next second, it flicked its 2 long tails, gathered swifts one by one, and hit Gardevoir at an astonishing speed. Gardevoir calmly raised his arms, the breeze blew by, pieces of magical leaf gathered together, surrounded Gardevoir's body, and then released it. Rumble. Swift and magical leaf met and collided in midair, and there was a deafening explosion and a puff of black smoke. The black smoke hadn't dissipated yet. Ambipom moved swiftly, sprang out from the black smoke, its long tail seemed to extend shadow claws, and slammed towards Gardevoir violently. Shadow Claw. But Gardevoir's response was faster. It chanted softly, its hands were folded in front of its chest, and surging energy began to emerge. Suddenly, a bright white light bloomed from the whole body, covering the entire venue. Dazzling gleam. White light engulfs Gardevoir, engulfs the incoming Ambipom, engulfs the entire field. Looks like I have to wear sunglasses in the future. Chen Qi muttered in a low voice. The white light gradually dissipated, and Ambipom was covered with scars all over his body, and fell to the ground. What? Gardevoir, with sparkling red pupils and swaying blue hair, bowed slightly towards Chen Qi. Well, the evolution has indeed improved a lot of combat power. Looking at this scene, Chen Qi couldn't help but nodded. Apart from Ash, few trainers can resist the urge to evolve a Pokemon. Let's go. Say goodbye to this Ambipom who came out specially to test Gardevoir's strength, and set off for a civilized society with one pet and one pet. Because he kept the idea of stabilizing Gardevoir's evolved strength, Chen Qi didn't rush back and let it go through several battles instead. It was not until the afternoon that Chen Qi finally emerged from the jungle. Afterwards, he took a taxi directly back to Imperial University. October 17th, the day before the start of the freshman exchange competition. The venue for this year's freshman exchange competition is located in the Shanghai Sports Arena, and all participants from each school need to arrive in Shanghai today. As one of the two major competitions at the university level, this freshman exchange competition, like previous ones, has attracted the attention of all college students, as well as the attention of some business organizations. Talented trainers from each school will take turns to appear in the freshman exchange competition, enjoying numerous applause and cheers. Every school attaches great importance to the freshman exchange competition, and the results of the freshman exchange competition can reflect the school's freshman zhozhong to a certain extent. In recent years, outstanding freshmen have emerged one after another, and elite-level battles are not unique. In short, under the expectation of everyone, the freshman exchange competition is about to begin. Is everything ready? Chu Wai asked. Bring it on. The contestants who participated in the freshman exchange competition responded. This time the team will be led by school team captain Chu Wai and coaching teacher Qin Chen. They will accompany the players to Shanghai to provide off-court support and assistance. Brother, I'm waiting for your good news at school. Bai Yu said with a smile. No problem. Chen Qi chuckled lightly, although he is usually modest, but his current strength is destined to be unable to be modest. There are 3 elite Pokemon. Who can be the enemy? Not long after, everyone went to the airport by car, and directly boarded the special plane of Imperial Capital University. The plane drove steadily above the blue sky, and landed steadily at the Shanghai airport after more than an hour. After being picked up by a special car, everyone came to check in at the hotel in Ongkan. This is Chen Qi's first visit to Shanghai, the most prosperous international metropolis in China. In fact, there is nothing unusual about it. It is full of high-rise buildings as far as the eye can see, just like the scenery of the Orberg Forest. You guys just rest well today, you don't need to train, just keep the best contest conditions. I'll let you know in the group if something happens. By the way, the list of popular contestants this time has been released. I posted it in the group. You can check it out yourself. Chu, who said this, turned and left. Everyone also returned to their respective rooms. The competition committee arranged a double room, where Chen Qi and Lu Bin lived together. After putting away the luggage, Lu Bin sat on a chair and looked at Zhang Dao outside the window. Not bad, young Master Lu commented lightly. Afterwards, Lu Bin took out his mobile phone, opened the group chat, and found the list of popular players. After watching for a while, Lu Bin raised his eyebrows to look at Chen Qi, and said, Chen Qi, both of our names are on it. Chen Qi raised his eyebrows, and also found out the list of popular players. He's number 1. The following is a brief introduction about Chen Qi. Chen Qi, born in the Chen family in southern Sichuan City, is the grandson of King Chen Tian. Currently, it is known that he has elite-level Combusken, Metatang and Kirlia, the first place in the field military training of Imperial University, breaking the record of Lu Elite in his early years. When Chen Qi saw this sentence, his pupils shrank suddenly, and his heart shook slightly. Immediately afterwards, he found Lu Bin's introduction below. Lu Bin, born in the Lu family of the imperial capital, nephew of Lu Elite, currently known to have a Gabite who is close to the elite level or has broken through to the elite level, and Tyrant, the field of the Imperial Capital University's second place in military training. Chen Qi looked puzzled, looked up at Bin, and asked aloud, who made this? Lu Bin shrugged and replied, the competition committee. There is this thing every time, and the intention is to select the popular contestants of this freshman exchange competition in advance, for the reference of the contestants, and for the audience to have fun. Of course, you should have noticed that the information above is lagging. Lu added. This thing is formulated based on the results of the field military training at the beginning. The higher the ranking at the beginning, the higher the ranking now. So it's only a little reference, and it can't be taken completely seriously. Speaking of this, Lu Bin rubbed his chin and said, well, but you can pay attention to the top 3 in each school's field military training. The rest, don't worry about it. Chen Qi nodded thoughtfully, but his eyes still stayed on the top line of words, grandson of King Chen Tian. At the same time, the contestants of Shanghai Metropolitan University are in the hotel. Pei Qian put away his luggage and called his father Pei Shang. Father, I've already arrived at the hotel, and the freshman exchange competition will start tomorrow. Pei Qian whispered. Yes, Pei Yusheng nodded slightly, and continued, perform well, and your mother and I will watch your game. Okay, Pei Qian nodded. After a while, Pei Qian spoke again. Father, when I checked the list of popular players just now, I saw Chen Qi's name. He is the number 1 in the field military training of Imperial University, so he should be famous. Pei Yusheng said lightly. But, Pei Qian paused, and then said again, it says that he was born in the Chen family in southern Sichuan City, and is the grandson of King Chen Tian. As soon as these words came out, Pei Yusheng on the other end of the phone fell into a dead silence, followed by a heavy panting sound. I don't know how long it took before the sound of letting things happen slowly sounded. King Chen Tian is starting to build momentum. Building momentum. Pei Qian was slightly puzzled. Well, it's just to build momentum. Pei Yusheng nodded, and then explained carefully, in the past, King Chen Tian acted in a low-key manner. Everyone knows the Chen family, but they don't know the Chen family in southern Sichuan City. This time, King Chen Tian is the opportunity of assist to announce to the world that their Chen family is located in Chuanan City. This is killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Pei Yusheng's eyes suddenly lit up. It is not only to build momentum for Chen Qi and pave the way for him, but also to make the Chen family in southern Sichuan City change from dormancy in the past and return with a high profile. Either King Chen Tian's strength has made a breakthrough, or King Chen Tian thinks that Chen Qi has a great chance of becoming an elite. In this way, the large and small organizations in our southern Sichuan City may not be able to sit still. Although it's a small move, it's a signal that King Chen Tian is sending to the outside world, and it has a far-reaching impact. Pei Qian listened silently, and then asked, Father, do you want me to find Chen Qi to promote the relationship? Pei Yusheng pondered for a moment, and then replied, you don't need to be deliberate, you are classmates, just let nature take its course. Leave the rest to me. The other side. Chen Qi and Lu Bin inquired about the top 3 places in other schools for field military training. Chen Qi saw Pei Qian's name in it. Pei Qian, it is known that he has a senior level Riolu, the 8th place in the field military training of Shanghai University. Compared with Chen Qi and Lu Bin, this is a very brief introduction, with no family background. Chen Qi went through a lot of information and found that there were only a few players who wrote their family backgrounds, and these people had one characteristic in common: the background was monstrous. Either a child of a top aristocratic family, or a relative of a certain elite, a relative of a certain master. On October 18th, the weather was fine. Magic City Competitive Sports Arena. Colorful flags are fluttering and white doves are flying. At this time, the competitive sports arena in Shanghai was full of people and every seat was full. Most of the audience are local college students in Shanghai, who come to cheer for their schools, and the rest are ordinary audiences. At the same time, all the contestants were sitting in the auditorium. In addition, the president of the University Competition Committee, the senior management of the Shanghai Pokemon Association, some local bigwigs in Shanghai, and representatives of university leaders all came one after another. This morning was the opening ceremony, and several big figures took turns to speak on stage, occupying most of the content of the opening ceremony. This year's freshman exchange competition will be broadcast live, and multiple cameras have already been prepared. Finally, the lengthy leadership speech ended and the host took the stage. Please be quiet, everyone. Next, let me introduce the list of schools participating in this year's freshman exchange competition, the university. Every time a name is read, there will be a burst of warm cheers and applause in the auditorium. The home field advantage was fully reflected at this moment, and the shouts from several local universities almost overturned the entire venue. After introducing the list of dozens of participating schools, host began to introduce the process and rules of this freshman exchange competition. Team battles will be held simultaneously with individual battles, but the finals will be staggered. Leaving aside the rules of group battles, individual battles are divided into elimination, relegation, and the final showdown. In addition to this afternoon, the first 3 days are knockout matches, the middle 2 days are main matches, and the last day is the final. In addition, the knockout round will be divided into multiple competition areas, and several games will be played simultaneously in the competition center. The points system implemented in the knockout round means that 1 point will be accumulated for a win, and no points will be counted for a loss. When all matches are over, the top 64 in the standings will advance to the main match. If the points are the same, it will be ruined. Unknowingly, the opening ceremony gradually came to an end, and all the contestants ate and rested to prepare for the afternoon competition. Chen Qi, which competition area are you in? Chu Wai asked. Division D. Chen Qi answered truthfully. As soon as these words came out, the rest of the players let out a long sigh of relief. It's okay, I'm not in the same division as me. Even Lu Bin, who was full of confidence, was visibly relieved that meeting Chen Qi early would do all harm and nothing good. He was afraid that being beaten by Chen Qi would cause his heart to collapse, which would affect the next game. Everyone work hard, we will try our best to win and qualify. Chu Wai said with a smile. No problem, all wins and qualify, as long as you have hands. Well, classic pre-game rhetoric. But as students of top universities, each of them has sufficient confidence in themselves. As long as you don't meet Chen Qi. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Magic City Competitive Sports Arena. Schools from various colleges and universities pushed the atmosphere in the venue to the climax, with cheers and applause coming and going for a long time. One game in D area. Chen Qi followed the number of games, came to D area and began to wait. He is the first game, and it is also a game that has attracted the attention of many people. As soon as Chen Qi sat down and waited, he noticed prying eyes cast from all directions. A moment later, under the leadership of the staff, Chen Qi stood on the battlefield. Rival in the first game was a slightly bloated boy. Seeing Chen Qi's figure, his face turned white, very ugly. It's over, the number 1 favorite. Yesterday, almost every contestant noticed Chen Qi, who was ranked first, and then many people logically dug out the video of the freshman's speech at Imperial University and remembered Chen Qi's appearance. Chen Qi, who has an elite Pokemon in the field military training, deserves the utmost care of every player. It's just that the fat boy didn't expect that he would be the first unlucky guy to meet Chen Qi. At the same time, Kawanan City. Xiao Qi is here. Father Chen and Mother Chen sat on the sofa and cheered as they watched Chen Qi on the screen. As expected of my son, this calm appearance follows me. Father Chen looked at Chen Qi with a calm face, and couldn't help muttering. Chen's mother rolled her eyes and ignored the narcissistic Chen's father. By the way, my dad suddenly. Chen Ma suddenly hesitated to speak. Father Chen nodded slightly. His original hippie smile turned serious, and said, our father has his own considerations. Immediately, he turned his head to look at Chen Ma, and said in a low voice, Alakazam is about to break through to the master level. Really? Hearing these words, Chen Ma looked surprised. Yeah, Father Chen nodded, and continued, it feels the opportunity, and it can break through to the master level in a year at most. Immediately afterwards, a smile appeared on his face. Finally, I won't embarrass the old man. Chen Ma chuckled, and said, you have to speed up. If you progress at this speed, Xiao Qi will become a master trainer in a few years, maybe still ahead of you. To become a master trainer, you must have at least 6 master Pokemon. Father Chen sneered, and said, I will always be his father, and I will definitely become a master trainer before him. Father Chen firmly believed in this. Imperial Capital. Kunlun University. Xiaoning, the freshman exchange competition has begun. Hurry up and support our school's contestants with me. Yang Yi yelled excitedly. After cheering for the players of his school, he turned his gaze and found that Chu Yuning had already watched the game silently. Okay Xiao Ning, let's start watching the game without making a sound. Who are you looking at? Yang Yi rushed to Chu Yuning's back and took a closer look. Hey, isn't this who? This is the new student spokesperson at Imperial University. It seems to be called Chen Qi. Yang Yi has a good memory, and he quickly remembered this person's name. Okay, Xiao Ning, I secretly watched the handsome guy Yang Yi launch a righteous criticism. Afterwards, Yang Yi moved a chair and sat beside Chu Yuning, and said carelessly, this Chen Qi seems to be a popular candidate to win the championship. I heard that he already has an elite Pokemon. Well, it's a strong rival. Immediately afterwards, Yang Yi pretended to comment. Magic City Competitive Sports Arena. The match between Chen Qi and the fat boy started immediately with the whistle of the referee. The two looked at each other and threw the Pokeball at the same time. White light bloomed, and two Pokemon figures appeared on the field. In front of the fat boy is an orange and blue Pokemon with orange gills and Pokemon, and black fins on the head and back. Pokemon. Marshtomp Water Ground. Ability. Torrent. Qualification. Master. Level. LV27 Senior. Marshtomp, one of the three imperial families of a certain generation, lives in the sticky and muddy land. It's not bad. Seeing the level of this Marshtomp, Chen Qi slightly sighed. This Marshtomp is already close to the elite level, and the Pokemon in the same period are good. And Chen Qi chose to send out Gardevoir, with a swaying white dress, elegant and elegant. Gardevoir. The fat boy secretly breathed a sigh of relief when he didn't see the rumored combustion. Immediately afterwards, he remembered the prerequisites for Kirlia to evolve into Gardevoir, and his expression froze. Elite Level 1 is a necessary condition for its transformation. This person actually has an elite level Pokemon. Thick haze climbed up his face, and the fat boy was full of despair. That's right, after all, he is a child of a superpower family. But two elite trainers. How can you fight? The fat boy roared inwardly. At the same time, the appearance of Flash Gardevoir immediately attracted most of the attention. Several cameras were aimed at Gardevoir, and the sound of shutters clicked one after another. Shiny Pokemon elite level strength. Any point of this will attract the attention of countless people at this time. And when 2 points converge on the same Pokemon, everyone will be crazy about it. Ah, so beautiful, my wife. Worthy of being a child of a super family. 2 elite Pokemon, cheating, right? I ordered. Kawanan City. This little guy has evolved into Gardevoir. Chen Ma looked at Gardevoir on the screen, her eyes lit up. The speed of progress is a bit fast. Father Chen narrowed his eyes and sighed slightly. Chen Ma glanced at him lightly, and said, it's not just a little fast, it's so fast that it's unusual. This child is only Xiao Qi's third Pokemon. Chen Ma added. Anyway, it's a good thing. Father Chen said. At this time, the fat boy had a dignified complexion, his whole body was tense, and he was extremely nervous. He bit his lip tightly and shouted, water gun. At the same time, Chen Qi's voice sounded quietly. Magical leaf. Field. Marshtomp opened his mouth, and in an instant, a thick stream of water gathered and hit Gardevoir. Gardevoir's red pupils were shining brightly, and pieces of magical leaf danced along with them, bursting out of the air suddenly. Boom! Suddenly, the water gun and the magical leaf collided fiercely in midair, making a loud noise. However, pieces of magical leaf pierced through the water in an instant, as if directly cutting off the water gun in the middle, and the latter turned into countless water droplets and sprinkled on the ground. The magical leaf, exuding a vigorous aura, continued to hit Marshtomp, and suddenly hit Marshtomp head-on, exploding on its body. The explosion continued for a moment, and then gradually subsided. The referee looked down at Marshtomp, whose eyes had turned into circles, and raised the flag quickly. Marshtomp is incapable of fighting. For a while, there was an uproar in the nearby stands. 1 move in seconds. It is your honor to die under the skirts of Queen Gardevoir. As expected of this year's favorite to win the championship, he showed terrifying suppression power as soon as he came on the court. Amidst the noisy discussion, the fat boy's hands trembled slightly, and he pulled out the Pokeball to take back the fallen Marshtomp. Immediately afterwards, he took a deep breath and raised his eyes to look at Chen Qi opposite. It's not good to be a teacher, it's not good to be a teacher. The fat boy muttered in a low voice, gradually calming down his mood. Anyone who gets crushed by rival in Game 1 is going to explode mentally. Then, under the watchful eyes of the referee, the fat boy threw the second Pokeball. It's up to you, Boldore. As the voice fell, a beam of red light shot out, and Boldore's figure appeared on the field. Boldore's body is mainly composed of a large navy blue rock, with 3 small navy blue rocks beside the main body and behind him his arms, and 4 sharp orange polygonal stones on top of his head. Pokemon. Boldore, Rock. Ability. Strong. Qualification. Master. Level. LV25, Senior. Veteran Boldore, Gardevoir's plaything. The battle begins. The referee waved down the flag, announcing the start of the battle again. Chen Chi's and the fat boy's voices sounded simultaneously on the battlefield. Gardevoir, Magical Leaf. Boldore, Power Gem. The fat boy said loudly with his face flushed. After the words fell, the orange crystals on Boldore's body shone like gems, shining on Gardevoir. Gardevoir refused to evade, and a piece of Magical Leaf shot out, hitting Boldore's body with a bang bang bang. Gardevoir was hit by the light and suffered minimal damage. On the other side, Boldore was hit by the Magical Leaf, his body was covered with scars, and he was severely injured in an instant, and he was dying like a candle in the wind. The sturdiness has worked. Looking at Boldore, who hadn't lost his ability to fight, Chen Chi nodded slightly. Many spectators in the stands also knew the ending of Boldore. Immediately afterwards, Gardevoir folded his arms, his red pupils glowed slightly, and suddenly his body burst into sharp white light like a nuclear transformation, engulfing the entire venue. What a terrifying, dazzling gleam. On the stands, someone secretly swallowed saliva and said in a hoarse voice, "I seem to hear the groans of dragon Pokemon." Someone laughed. The white light gradually dissipated, and Boldore was covered in bruises, and he collapsed on the ground powerlessly. Boldore lost his ability to fight, so the winner is Chen Chi. The referee raised the flag representing Chen Chi at the right time and said loudly. All of a sudden, there was warm applause from both sides of the stands. Chu Wai folded his arms, looked at Chen Chi on the battlefield with a calm face, and said with a smile, "There is no pressure on him. If you want to put pressure on him, you have to wait until the final at least." Teacher Chin said with a cheerful smile. Chu Wai smiled slightly, and said the most arrogant words in the calmest tone, "It may not be the final." This Chen Chi, this Gardevoir. The coaching teacher of Shanghai Metropolitan University frowned, with a serious expression on his face. He originally came to observe Chen Chi's elite-level Combusken, but he didn't expect to see another elite-level Pokemon. And judging from the current combat power shown, it can be called Invincible. As expected of a descendant of King Chen Tian. Super energy Pokemon are already difficult to deal with. Shen Weiui's Pokemon is already difficult enough, why did Gardevoir suddenly appear? The teachers from other schools who came to inquire about information also frowned and wrote down Gardevoir's information. But there are only a few pieces of information about Gardevoir. After all, it only used 2 moves in the game just now. Still remains to be seen. Chen Chi and the fat boy walked to the center of the venue, shook hands, and then turned to leave. On the way to leave the arena, Chen Chi looked around and found that his side seemed to be the first to end the battle. Also, from the start to the end of the battle, it took less than 5 minutes. This is the first match of Chen Chi's unremarkable freshman exchange match. Afterwards, Chen Chi sat in the corner of the stands to watch other matches. By the way, look at the standings list. Chi took out his mobile phone and logged into the official website of the freshman exchange competition, where the knockout round scoreboard was announced in real time. Chen Chi's name is impressively ranked first, with 1 point. The rest of the players have 0 points. After watching the competition for a while, Chen Qifa Zhao Dehao found that the level of this freshman exchange competition is really good. As far as the eye can see, almost all of them are Pokemon above level 25. Thinking about it, after all, being able to stand here means that he has stood out from countless freshmen and can be regarded as the best among his peers. Time gradually passed unknowingly, and one battle after another ended. Because the battle format is 2v2, and the battle level is almost senior level, the game time is basically controlled within 15 minutes. About an hour later, Chen Chi's cell phone vibrated slightly, and the freshman exchanged frequent messages. 2 games in D area. Chen Qi muttered about the venue information, and soon arrived at the corresponding venue. The last battle ended soon, and Chen Qi stepped onto the battlefield under the leadership of the staff. This time, there were more spectators on both sides of the stands. Many people came here especially, and many people even took out their mobile phones to take pictures. The favorite to win the championship, the grandson of Chen Tian, the elite Flash Gardevoir, and Chen Qi are the favorites. The rival in this scene was a round-faced Stephanie, who looked cute, but when she saw Chen Qi's figure, she swallowed nervously. When she knew that her rival was Chen Qi, she was already in a mess. Nobody wants to face the favorites. She stood tremblingly on the command seat, her consciousness was still in a trance. Although the coaching teacher has been encouraging her before playing and enjoying the match, the result is not the most important. But no one can face failure calmly, let alone a crushed failure. Thoughts flashed through her mind, and when she heard the referee's voice of sending Pokemon, Stephanie let out a deep breath and secretly cheered for herself. Then when she raised her eyes to meet the calm eyes from Chen Qi, her complexion became stiff again. For these more ordinary players, the last thing they want to face is Chen Qi, the favorite to win the championship. Although the field military training happened more than a month ago, since others were able to lead at that time, they can naturally lead now. One step ahead, one step ahead. Please send out Pokemon from both players. Seeing that Stephanie hadn't moved for a long time, the referee reminded again. Okay. Stephanie woke up from the trance, she nodded like a chicken pecking rice, then took a deep breath, and threw a Pokeball violently. Go, Azumarill! White light bloomed, and the figure of Azumarill appeared on the field. Azumarill's body is nearly round, blue all over, with 2 tall pink ears and a white wavy pattern on its abdomen. Pokemon. Azumarill, Water, Fairy. Ability, Hercules. Qualification, Master. Level, LV27, Senior. Hey, isn't this the Dragon Slayer warrior? Chen Qi found that almost none of the Pokemon seen in the freshman exchange competition was below Master level. It's really a master walk all over the place, elite is not as good as a dog. But think about it, after all, these are more than 100 elite freshmen selected from the same class of freshmen across the country. On Chen Qi's side, Gardevoir was still dispatched. As soon as Gardevoir appeared on the stage, he immediately attracted the attention of countless people, even the girl on the opposite side stared at Gardevoir intently. So beautiful, she exclaimed, but no matter how much you praise and praise, this battle still has to go on. The two looked at each other and gave orders at the same time. Gardevoir, Magical Leaf. Azumarill, Aqua Jet. As soon as the words fell, Azumarill called out softly, and then his eyes froze. A water column shot up from the ground and covered it. Immediately afterwards, Azumarill was attached to the water column and rushed to Gardevoir with lightning speed. Gardevoir was attacked and suffered a little pain, but it didn't change its face, its arms danced lightly, pieces of Magical Leaf danced lightly, and directly hit the attacking Azumarill. With 2 Pokemon so close, Azumarill has no room to dodge. Bang bang bang, pieces of Magical Leaf exploded on Azumarill's body, setting off a puff of black smoke. Gardevoir stood aside silently, his red pupils flickering. The black smoke dissipated, and Azumarill collapsed to the ground and fell into a coma. Contest condition. In the stands on both sides, there was the silence of dead normal first, followed by warm cheers like a tide. Another double recording spike. The coaching teachers from each university looked dull, opened their mouths, and remained silent for a long while. You put it here to make a baby cup, right? How can someone hit it? Kill rival every game, how to collect your intelligence. The coaching teacher of Shanghai Metropolitan University frowned, biting the pen holder, scribbling and correcting in the notebook, and finally wrote a line. Gardevoir, elite level strength, mastering Magical Leaf, dazzling gleam, extremely high threat factor. Then, he took a deep breath, thoughts in his mind. 1 elite Combuskin, 1 elite Gardevoir, individual battles are probably worrying. Field. With trembling hands, Stephanie retrieved the fallen Azumarill. Although she has been mentally prepared for a long time, she still has a bit of mental explosion when the target of the instant kill is her own Pokemon. Originally her plan was to bring Azumarill up close to Gardevoir and catch him off guard. Everyone knows that when facing Pokemon like Gardevoir, you must fight close to hand, otherwise you will be played with. Thoughts flashed. Stephanie's chest heaved slightly, she raised her hand and threw the second Pokeball. Please, Roselia. As a beam of red light fell to the ground, Roselia gracefully landed on the field, with a smile on her face, and slightly bowed to the crowd. Roselia is petite, with 3 thorns on her head, her body is light green, she holds a blue rose in her left hand and a red rose in her right hand. Pokemon. Roselia, Grass Poison. Ability. Natural Reply. Qualification. Gym. Level. LV26 Senior. Poison Jab. Stephanie's eyes twinkled, and then she shouted. Psychic. Chen-Chi snapped his fingers and gave an order lightly. After the words fell, Gardevoir's eyes glowed with purple light, and the tyrannical super energy fluctuation swept the entire venue, and the substantive confusion beams converged. Suddenly, the beam of confusion came through the air, directly hitting Roselia, who was preparing to attack. Confusion invaded her mind, like a hammer hitting Roselia's brain nerves one after another, causing her to have a splitting headache. It hugged its head and cried out in pain, then fell straight to the ground. Roselia lost the ability to fight, so the winner is Chen-Chi. Looking at the scene in front of him, the referee raised his eyebrows, feeling that the game ended too quickly. It shouldn't be 5 minutes yet, right? Come back, Roselia. Stephanie took Roselia back with a numb face, and then sighed secretly. This is to die before leaving the teacher. Azumarill is restrained by grass, and Roselia is restrained by superpower. Stephanie felt that her luck was too bad, which led to her lack of combat experience. She turned her head and glanced at the rest of the battlefield. Fierce battles were going on one after another. Only her side ended neatly, without any twists and turns. Chen-Chi and the heavy-faced Stephanie walked to the center of the field and shook hands. Afterwards, he left the battlefield under the gaze of many eyes. The elite Gardevoir is really a dimensionality reduction blow to ordinary players. Only when encountering popular players like Lu Bin may there be some twists and turns and confrontations. Otherwise, it will be a one-sided crush. After Chen-Chi's match, the knockout round is still going on in an orderly manner. This time he waited for nearly 2 hours before the third match officially started. This time, more spectators came after hearing the news, and there were many contestants among them. The rival in this game was on the same level as the rival in the previous 2 games. Chen-Chi sent Gardevoir to solve it easily. In this way, his record is 3 wins and 3 wins, with 3 points. After the match, Chen-Chi sat in the corner of the stands, looking at the other players' matches. There were intense and passionate battles, and there were also one-sided crushing duels. The cheers and applause of the audience were intertwined in the stadium sky. Time passed slowly unknowingly, the sun was setting, and the setting sun was like blood. Today's knockout round also gradually fell to Veilstone. Chen-Chi played a total of 3 games in the afternoon, so he felt a little dissatisfied. If only we could fast forward to the final, he muttered to himself. On the bus back to the hotel, the players of Tito University had a heated discussion. It's probably about discussing how good a certain player from a certain school is, crushing rival all the way, or whoever's command is particularly disgusting and needs special attention. Chen-Chi took out his mobile phone and checked the current points ranking. There are quite a few all-winners like him, who now have 3 points, including Lu Bin, Shen Weiyue and even Lu Yan. Chen-Chi also saw the name of his old squad leader Pei Qian. His current record is 2 wins and 1 loss, which is not bad. After all, some unlucky ones have 0 wins and 3 losses. But it doesn't matter, there are still 2 days before the end of the knockout round, and there is still a certain hope of qualifying. At the same time, on the bus of South Sichuan University. You all performed well today. Ruonin and Xiu won all battles, and we will continue to work hard tomorrow. The coaching teacher sat in the front row and said with a smile. South Sichuan University is a first-class university, and its previous results can only be regarded as upper-middle level BCBH. But this year, the competitiveness of South Sichuan University is very strong. Coaching teacher is full of hope for Gong Ruonin and Zhang Xiu. Teacher, I will continue to work hard. Zhang Xiu smiled and nodded slightly. Me too. Gong Ruonin looked indifferent. Teacher smiled gently, and then said, the other students should also work hard, there are still 2 days left, and everything is still undecided. Okay, let me tell you about the popular players from other schools. You must be very careful when you meet them. The first one is of course Chen Qi from Imperial University. In the past 2 days, everyone should have heard of him like a thunderbolt. Today he dispatched the elite Gardevoir, killing rival every game with one hit, showing terrifying dominance. If the students in the D competition area meet him, they can give up the competition at their own discretion. Elite Gardevoir, discretionary abandonment of the game. As soon as this remark came out, there was a lot of discussion on the bus. Yes, I watched his game earlier. Gardevoir's methods are very cruel. It's really possible to give up the game. To be killed in 2 consecutive games is an individual's mentality explosion. Is it really that powerful? Go and see tomorrow. Among the noisy crowd, Gong Ruonan lay quietly by the car window, looking at the rapidly passing scenery. Ruonan, do you really not know about these players? The female player next to her tugged at Gong Ruonan's sleeve and asked Zhao Didi. Gong Ruonan turned her head, then shook her head lightly. For me, it's not necessary. After a while, she added softly, I prefer to challenge the unknown. If I know the news in advance, it will reduce a lot of fun. Oh, the female contestant nodded thoughtfully. Gong Ruonan seemed to be like this all along. She devoted herself to practicing martial arts, let alone knowing the information in advance. She rarely even used her mobile phone. After a while, Gong Ruonan took the initiative to ask again, among the contestants this year, is there any Pokemon whose Pokemon is Blaziken? Hearing this, the female contestant was stunned for a moment, and then said quietly, Ruonan, if Combusken wants to evolve into Blaziken, it needs to break through to the elite level. How is it possible for a player to have Blaziken now? No. Just when Gong Ruonan lowered her eyes, the female contestant suddenly gave a light snort, as if she remembered something. The female contestant pondered for a while, and then continued, the Chen Qi Wang teacher said just now, his trump card Pokemon is an elite Combusken. Elite Combusken. Hearing this, Gong Ruonan's eyes flickered. The female contestant said again, but that was news a month and a half ago. Maybe his Combusken has evolved into a Blaziken, but he hasn't been dispatched yet. A month and a half ago. Hearing this sentence, Gong Ruonan's eyes lit up, and he said quickly, can I see the information about him? The female contestant didn't understand why Gong Ruonan's attitude changed so quickly, but she still nodded, took out her mobile phone, and opened the information about Chen Qi. In fact, there is no need to search carefully. The information about Chen Qi has been flying all over the sky in the past 2 days. His family background, his appearance have long been no secrets. When she saw Chen Qi on the phone screen, Gong Ruonan was startled, and then whispered, it's him, it's really him. Huh. The female contestant tilted her head and looked at Gong Ruonan suspiciously. The next second, Gong Ruonan suddenly raised his head and said in a low voice, his Combusken has long evolved into Blaziken. And, Gong Ruonan stared closely at the female contestant, her black eyes flickered, and said, I already have. Has professional combat power. What? As night fell, the cold moonlight sprinkled the earth. Chen Qi and Lu Bin stayed in the room and had dinner. Chen Qi, today I went shopping and collected some information. I probably know the rivals that need to be paid attention to this year. After eating and drinking, Lu Bin sat on the chair and said, Road. Well, of course, I may not need to pay too much attention to you. He added. Chen Qi was noncommittal and asked with a smile, what are there? Let's just talk about trainers who have elite Pokemon. Imperial University has me, you, and Shen Wire. There are 2 at Shanghai University, both of whom are beginners at the elite level. In addition, there is a player from South Sichuan University, who seems to be called a genius fighting girl, and her is an elite Lucario. Genius fighting girl. Elite Lucario. Hearing this, Chen Qi's expression was a little strange, and he instantly understood that this person was the girl who asked Master Ji Yushi for guidance a few days ago. Well, this year's level is really a bit high. There is also a player from Nanhua University, and there are also elite Pokemon. Speaking of this, Lu Bin sighed. After many years, the freshman exchange competition will not be full of elite level Pokemon. Chen Qi thought about it seriously, and then replied, it's not impossible. The 2 talked for a while, and then lay on the bed, playing with their mobile phones. Chen Qi, respond to messages from friends and relatives. Speaking of which, he has quite a lot of relatives. The main reason is that after Chen Yi became an elite, many relatives who were originally far apart appeared. The development of an aristocratic family is inseparable from the prosperity of the population, and a few people alone are not enough to support a large aristocratic family. With the support of Chen Wei's help, these relatives have developed and achieved their own achievements. Every relative is a scattered branch and leaf, and when an important event is encountered, these branches and leaves will unite to form a towering giant tree with luxuriant branches and leaves. Next day, playoff day 2. As the lazy and soft autumn sun fell on the competitive sports field in Shanghai, Pidgeys spread their wings, or landed on the railings, or flew in midair, tilting their heads to watch what was happening on the field. Fighting trainers. Today is a very critical day. If there are too many losses today, the probability of qualifying will be very slim. Every player will do their best to break into the race and go further. Who will be the next rival? Lu Bin sat beside Chen Qi with his arms folded and asked curiously. Chen Qi looked down at the message on the phone, and replied, Lu Yu from Sucheng University. Poor girl. Lu Bin shook his head regretfully when he heard the name. At the same time, in the player lounge of Sucheng University. It's over, my next rival is Chen Qi. Lu Qian looked at the message notification that popped up on the screen of her mobile phone, her face suddenly became disastrous, and the light in her eyes instantly lost. As soon as these words came out, the contestants beside him all looked at Lu Qian with a gloomy complexion, with different expressions, either sympathy or lamentation. Meeting the favorite to win the championship, I can only say that Lu Qian's luck is really good. The players who were assigned to the D competition area were uneasy, while the players in the other competition areas were secretly happy. The coaching teacher turned his head to look at Lu Qian, wanted to say something but hesitated, and after a while, he said, It's okay Lu Qian, the result of the game is not the most important thing, just enjoy the process of the game. Hearing this, Lu Qian cast a resentful look. Enjoy the race. Are you referring to the process of being killed in seconds? Suddenly, a young man in the corner pushed his glasses and said slowly, Actually, it's not like you don't have a chance. After the words fell, everyone present cast doubtful glances at him. Facing everyone's eyes, the young man looked ordinary, and said lightly, Gardevoir is twice restrained by the ghost type, and your Pokémon happens to be the ghost type. Lu Qian was slightly taken aback, then shook her head and said, But my Pokémon is only at the senior level. As a college student, who doesn't know attribute restraint? The difference in strength is the flaw. There was a strange light reflected under the silver frame of the boy, and he calmly said, His Gardevoir is just entering the elite level, your Pokémon is close to the elite level, the gap is not as big as imagined, and with attribute restraint, it might be impossible to fight. Quote. While everyone fell into a brief silence, the young man continued, If you find a way to get close and attack with the power of thunder, there is every hope that you can defeat Gardevoir. Looking at the burning eyes of the young man, Lu Qian froze for a moment, then stammered, Then let me try. Try it, anyway, if you win, you will earn blood, and if you lose, you will not lose money. That's right, 3 people have already fallen anyway. Come on, try it like this. Whitney, maybe you are the first player to defeat Chen Qi, we will all cheer for you. Amid bursts of encouragement, Lu Qian rekindled her confidence, took a deep breath, and walked towards the battlefield. Not long after, Lu Qian stood on the command seat, facing Chen Qi from afar. Friends cheered enthusiastically, and Lu Qian's eyes became more and more firm, and her confidence became stronger and stronger. I can definitely defeat him. Lu Qian shouted secretly, cheering for herself. Seeing that the players on both sides were ready, the referee quickly raised the flag and shouted, Please send out your own Pokémon. As the referee's voice sounded, the two threw a Pokéball at the same time. Go, Gardevoir. As everyone expected, Chen Qi still chose to send Gardevoir. Gardevoir has a noble temperament, like a super queen standing on the top of the clouds overlooking all living beings. Go, Shuppet. As the voice fell, white light bloomed, and only a gray Pokémon was suspended in midair. It has a sharp horn on its head and 2 big eyes on its head. Pokémon. Shuppet Ghost. Ability. Sleepless. Qualification. Master. Level. LV28 Senior. Hey, finally there is a Ghost-type Pokémon showing up. Looking at the Shuppet in front of him, Chen Qi became slightly interested. Like Pokemon, the Ghost series is a rare and precious pronoun. If you want to find Ghost-type Pokemon, it is recommended to go to an abandoned old house in the wild at midnight, or in a spooky forest. Just as an abandoned power plant can meet Zapdos, an abandoned old house can also meet Ghost Pokemon. Gardevoir is twice as restrained by the Ghost system, so pay a little attention. The game begins. The referee waved down the flag and blew the whistle, announcing that the game officially opened Veilstone. The moment the referee's voice landed, the voices of the two rang out at the same time. Shuppet, Shadow Ball. Gardevoir, Teleport. Shuppet floated in midair, its eyes froze, and suddenly gathered an extremely black shadow ball, and rushed towards Gardevoir. But Gardevoir's eyes glowed blue, his figure flickered, and he disappeared out of nowhere. Boom! The shadow ball hit where Gardevoir had just been, and the ground sank a deep hole, setting off a deafening explosion. Shuppet, behind you! The next second, Lucian shouted. Hearing this, Shuppet turned around and looked around, only to see Gardevoir appearing behind him, and a tyrannical beam of super energy hit him precisely. Boom! Suddenly, black smoke rose. After a long while, Shuppet fell straight from midair and landed on the ground, with circles in his eyes. At the same time, the sound of cheering from Su Cheng University in the stands stopped abruptly. Lucian opened her mouth, she retracted the Shuppet under the referee's reminder, and then turned her head to look at the place where Su Cheng University player was. The young man who made a plan shrank his neck. There's always a gap between planning and execution, he muttered under his breath. Field. Chen Qi looked at Lucian who was opposite her with twinkling eyes. Speaking of which, Gardevoir is indeed suitable for learning Shadow Ball. Gardevoir is restrained by Ghost, and then Ghost is restrained by Ghost. With Shadow Ball mastered, you can face Ghost-type Pokemon more calmly. After Lucian took back the Shuppet, she immediately threw a second Pokeball, which was her last hope. Please, Frostlass. As a beam of red light landed, Frostlass in kimono floated in midair. Frostlass' head resembles a drop of water turned sideways, with two ice crystals on top and holes through which his purple skin can be seen. Pokemon. Frostlass Ice Ghost. Ability. Hidden Snow. Qualification. Master. Level. LV27 Senior. Frostlass, also very rare Pokemon. It is said that Frostlass is a Pokemon possessed on an icicle by the soul of a woman who disappeared into the Snow Mountain with Spite in her arms, and lives in the Snow Mountain. Thoughts flashed, and the referee's voice sounded. Game start. With a tense face, Lucian shouted, Icy Wind. After the words fell, Frostlass, who was floating in midair, opened his mouth and blew out a gust of cold wind. The surrounding temperature dropped rapidly, and the cold wind rushed towards Gardevoir. Mystical Fire. Chen Qi calmly spoke with a calm gaze. Gardevoir danced lightly, and immediately spit up a scorching flame from his mouth, rushing towards the cold wind. Boom! The flames collided fiercely with the cold wind in midair, and the flames surged violently, melting the cold wind in an instant, causing it to dissipate in the world. But the flame didn't disappear. Just like a roaring fire dragon, it was still attacking Frostlass. Double team. Seeing this, Lucian quickly shouted. Rub rub rub. Suddenly, countless clones of Frostlass appeared out of thin air, occupying the field. The flame crashed into a clone, and both dissipated at the same time. Looking at the countless clones of Sky occupying the venue, Chen Qi snapped his fingers in an unhurried manner, and a cold voice suddenly sounded, dazzling gleam. As soon as the words landed, Gardevoir put his hands together in front of his chest, and a sharp white light like a nuclear transformation bloomed instantly. The terrifying white light enveloped the entire venue, and Lucian couldn't help squinting her eyes. When the white light gradually dissipated, Lucian looked intently, only to see Frostlass lying on the ground covered in cuts and bruises. Frostlass is incapacitated, so the winner is Chen Qi. The referee held up the banner representing Chen Qi, announcing the official end of the competition. Looking at Frostlass who fell into a coma, Lucian fell into a brief silence. However, soon she suddenly realized an important thing. I seem to be the first one to fight back and forth with Chen Qi. Well, Frostlass made Gardevoir use two attack skills. As always, Lucian was in a much happier mood, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. As expected of you, Lucian. I didn't get killed by Gardevoir in seconds. Good. The coaching teacher of Shanghai University watched the whole game silently, and then closed his notebook with a blank expression. He had already made up his mind not to watch Chen Qi's games in the future. Because it is useless. As far as the strength shown by this Gardevoir is really invincible. Even if he worked hard to defeat this Gardevoir, Chen Qi still has a Liwang chicken that has already broken through to the elite level. Field. Chen Qi and Lu Qian walked to the battlefield, shook hands, and left separately. Above the stands, Gong Ruonen's eyes were hot, staring at Chen Qi's back, and whispered, "That's right, it's him." In a daze, she recalled the Blaziken that brazenly defeated Holicha, recalled the scene of being violently beaten by Cave Machamp, and recalled what Master Ji Yushi said when he had his hands behind his back. The Blaziken you have seen has such high aptitude that it is really rare in your life. But although it has good talent, it works harder. These two together, I am afraid that in a few years' time, they will aspire to the pinnacle of martial arts. Chapter 91. October 20th, at sunset. 5 venues in Division D. Charmeleon, Flamethrower. Charmeleon opened his mouth, during which flames surged, and in an instant a thick flamethrower gathered, rushing towards Gardevoir. Light screen. Chen Qi's voice sounded quietly. What? Gardevoir waved his arms, and super energy waves surged, and a dazzling glass light screen suddenly lit up in front of it. Boom! The flamethrower hits the light screen, takes half damage, and then charges towards Gardevoir. But at this time, Gardevoir was already prepared, and dodged ahead of time, easily dodging the flamethrower. Charmeleon, rush over and use Shadow Claw. Charmeleon's trainer saw the dazzling light screen, thought for a moment, and shouted instantly. Roar! Charmeleon let out a low growl, stepped forward, and rushed towards Gardevoir with astonishing speed. Between the spark and the flint, it was already approaching Gardevoir, and shadow power emerged from its sharp claws, and it slammed towards Gardevoir. But Gardevoir stood there silently, his eyes glowing purple, facing Charmeleon's attack without hesitation. All of a sudden, Charmeleon found himself controlled by a tyrannical force, lost control of his body, and floated into 3 zeros. Roar! Charmeleon sent out furious roar, trying to break free from Psychic's shackles, but no matter how he struggled, it was useless. It was as if being tightly clamped by an invisible big hand, and the feeling of suffocation struck. Charmeleon. Seeing this scene, trainer looked anxious and shouted. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Charmeleon was controlled by Psychic and smashed towards ground heavily. Boom! All of a sudden, Charmeleon came into close contact with ground, and with a dong sound, its eyes had already turned into circles. Charmeleon is incapacitated, so the winner is Chen Qi. Seeing this, the referee held up the flag and said loudly. After the voice fell, there was warm applause from the stands. Ah, another victim. Actually, this guy is pretty good, and he lasted 5 minutes in Chen Qi's hands. Ahem, I also survived for 5 minutes. By the way, after this match, it seems like Chen Qi has no match. It's gone, he won all the battles and qualified directly. Outrageous. With a calm expression on his face, Chen Qi put Gardevoir back into the Pokeball, then walked with rival to the center of the production site and shook hands. In all fairness, the strength of this rival is very good, at least among the dozen or so rivals Chen Qi has encountered, it ranks among the top 3. 2 Pokemon that are infinitely close to the elite level have caused Gardevoir a little trouble. Chen Qi left the field, took out his mobile phone, logged into the official website of the event, and opened the standings. Well, he tops the list with his impressive record of all victories. In addition, Lu Bin and a player from Shanghai Metropolitan University also qualified with a record of 100% victory. Both of them have elite-level Pokemon. At this point in time, having an elite Pokemon is unreasonable and superior. In addition, Shen Weiwei lost a game, and Chen Qi happened to be watching the game. Her rival is the descendant of the Gym Master of the Ghost Department. When the Superpower Department meets the Ghost Department, the result is obvious. The two fought fiercely for a long time, and in the end Shen Weiwei came up short. And Lu Yan also performed well, only lost 1 game, and successfully advanced to the main hall. The remaining 2 players also advanced to the main match with a good record and joined Chen Qi. So far, the 6 contestants from Imperial University have all advanced to the main match. Chen Qi also paid special attention to his old squad leader. After losing 3 games, he managed to qualify. In short, it is a good thing to be able to qualify. Time is passing by gradually, and when the afterglow of the setting sun completely covers the entire competitive sports arena in Shanghai, all the matches in the knockout stage of the freshman exchange competition will be completely over. Some people are lost, some are regretful, some are happy, all kinds of emotions are intertwined on the field. But no matter what, the competition was cruel. More than half of the contestants were eliminated, leaving only 64 contestants. These 64 contestants will compete for the final spot through 3 battles tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Although the number of games has decreased, the bloodshed and intensity have risen sharply. No one wants to be eliminated in the main draw. Everyone wants to stand on the final stage and enjoy the admiration from college students across the country. Chen Qi has no special feeling about this. He just regards the freshman exchange competition as a way to test the results of the 3-month training. He also has the same view on the College Student League and the Dongwang Conference. He tested the training results through the competition and received a championship medal by the way. Do you want to go out tonight to have fun? On the bus back to the hotel, Lu Bin made a loud suggestion. The rest of the people were ready to move. Chu Wai turned his head and smiled slightly. Everyone, take a good rest these few days, and when the game is over, you can have as much fun as you want. Chin teacher also smiled and said, after the game, let's go to have fun together, and I will treat you when the time comes. Teacher Chin is amazing. Chin teacher, I love you. Amid the commotion, everyone returned to the hotel. While waiting for dinner, Teacher Chin gathered the 6 of them to discuss matters related to the main match. You all performed very well this time, and all of you have advanced to the main match. Let me congratulate you first. Chin teacher said this sentence, paused for a while, considered the sentence, and then said again, but you must not take it lightly because the real competition will really begin. He glanced at everyone present one by one, and said with a solemn face, you should know that there is no weak player who can pass the tests and enter the main match. Perhaps influenced by Chin teacher, the expressions of the 6 people present gradually became serious. Tell me about the upcoming schedule. The main match is different from the knockout match. As long as you lose a game in the main match, you will be eliminated immediately. Yes, the main race is not a point system. In theory, you can win 3 games and you can appear smoothly, but the problem is that this is only the most ideal contest condition. If you lose the first game directly, then I regret to tell you that you were eliminated. Yes, so the bloody level of the main match is much higher than that of the knockout match. Chen Qi and Lu Bin, I don't need to say more about you two, just keep the contest condition. Teacher Chin looked at the 2 of them. Afterwards, Teacher Chin turned his head to look at Shen Weiwei again, and said in a deep voice, you should feel your own shortcomings through that match, and there is little hope of making a comeback when you were restrained. Shen Weiwei didn't speak, but bit her lower lip lightly. But as far as your strength is concerned, as long as you maintain a good contest condition, it is not a big problem to advance to the finals. The premise is that you don't be affected by a temporary loss. Shen Weiwei nodded slightly. And you, Lu Yan, your current situation is a bit dangerous. After a long time, Chin teacher let out a deep breath, looked at everyone and said, in short, everyone will work hard in the future, and don't have too much psychological burden. Every step you take now is keeping your own records. Just do your best. After saying these words, Chin teacher bid farewell to the 6 people and turned to go to the team battle players. Chu Wai clapped his hands and said with a gentle smile, okay, everyone, rest early after eating, and prepare for tomorrow's competition with the best contest conditions. After eating and drinking, Chen Qi and Lu Bin returned to the room side by side. I have already seen the final scene. In the silence, Lu Bin suddenly grinned. Meeting Chen Qi's suspicious gaze, Lu Bin put one hand in his pocket, leaned against the wall, and said carelessly, you and I stand on the stage of the final show. In the auditorium, thousands of people shouted our names, and the dazzling lights hit us. After saying this, Lu Bin pointed to Chen Qi and said with a smile, Chen Qi, although I have already lost to you twice. But this time, I will stand on the final stage and wait for you. Under everyone's gaze, defeat you. Chen Qi listened silently, then raised his eyes to look at Lu Bin. His eyes reflected the spirited young man, so he replied with power trip, I can defeat you twice. Nature can defeat you for the third time. Lu Bin didn't speak anymore, he just quietly looked at Chen Qi opposite, with a brighter smile on his face. He suddenly felt that he was luckier than uncle. He has a strong enemy who can always push himself forward. At night, Chen Qi was sitting on the balcony admiring the night view outside the window. The phone on the table was shaking slightly. He picked up the phone and looked at the screen. It was a message from Chu Yuchen. Tomorrow's game, come on. Chen Qi smiled, tapped the screen, and replied to the message. Thank you, I have received your blessing. Okay, good night. Good night. Chen Qi was about to put down his phone when he suddenly saw a piece of news pop up on the window bar. It is reported that recently, the Pokemon Association in South Sichuan City, together with the security guards, has established a blockade facility on the thousands of kilometers of the southwest border, aiming to deal with people who trespass without permission in a timely manner. Chen Qi was slightly taken aback, and immediately clicked in to check the specific content of the news. The general content of the news is that from time to time, foreign personnel, including poachers and criminals, enter Dongwang through the southwest border and have a serious impact on the security of the southwest region. So the Pokemon Association of South Sichuan City joined forces with police officers to strengthen the management of the border, trying to reduce the occurrence of this situation. Chen Qi took a closer look at the map shown in the news, and found that not only the borders were strengthened, but also many secret and dangerous places were also within the scope of management. It's just about this point, which is not mentioned in the news content. After learning about the important affairs of his family and country, Chen Qi soon fell into a deep sleep. Next day, the first day of the race. A competitive sports arena in Shanghai. Lu Yan sat on the auditorium and looked around, only seeing crowds of people, so he sighed, there are a lot of people. Lu Bin sat aside with his arms folded, nodded and said, after all, it's the main match. Compared with the knockout matches where several games are played at the same time, only one main match is played at the same time, so the audience seats are full. At that time, the two contestants will fight under the filming of thousands of spectators and several cameras, and they will be under great psychological pressure. Secondly, the original several live broadcast rooms are integrated into one, and the two players on the field will be completely exposed to spotlight. This is the first hurdle that every player needs to cross. Some people are nervous and trembling, so they perform abnormally. Some people are born with a big heart, the more attention they receive, the more excited they are, and they perform exceptionally. Chen Qi is actually the first match. Lu Yan looked at the venue and said with emotion. Lu Bin's eyes flickered, and he replied lightly, normal, the first battle needs to stir up the atmosphere. As the favorite to win the championship, Chen Qi is the most suitable candidate. It's just his rival suffering. Lu Bin continued. Chen Qi had been waiting in the player lounge for a long time, and he was notified in advance of the rival information of his first battle. Xu Shengping from Lucheng University, two Pokemon that are infinitely close to the elite level, and one Arcanine, are only tired of wolves every day. This guy seems to have a thing for canine Pokemon. Of course, he showed quite good strength in the knockout round, and his commanding style was bold. Yes, that is courage. He always gives orders that seem reckless and impulsive, but they often achieve good results. See Ash for details. Arcanine, Chen Qi muttered in a low voice. To be honest, Arcanine is his favorite Pokemon, with a domineering appearance, powerful strength, loyal guardian, and can also be used as a mount Pokemon. It's a pity that this Pokemon has long since disappeared in the wild, and it can only be obtained by joining the relevant system of the police superintendent. But Chen Qi is different, he is a descendant of a privileged family. Speaking of which, it's also time to tame the fourth Pokemon. Chen Qi thought to himself. Now Blaziken's strength is approaching the professional level, while Metig and Gardevoir have certain dominance in the elite level and can play their own roles. This timing is perfect for Breeder's fourth Pokemon. What kind of Pokemon to conquer? Wait until the end of the freshman exchange competition to think about it. Contestant Chen Qi, please go to the battlefield. At the same time, a horn sounded in the lounge, interrupting Chen Qi's thoughts. Chen Qi stood up, first confirmed that he was wearing the correct clothes, then left the lounge and walked towards the battlefield. Walking in the long tunnel of players, you can clearly hear the noisy voices in the venue, or cheers, or discussions. Chen Qi quickly walked out of the runner's tunnel, stepped from the shadows, and walked towards the green grass. The morning sun slanted into the battlefield, and several cameras aimed at Chen Qi in an instant, and enthusiastic cheers erupted from the auditorium in all directions. In this world that is keen on Pokemon battles, the meaning of trainer carries too much. Deafening cheers sounded in his ears. Chen Qi took a deep breath, and then a faint smile appeared on his face. His blood began to boil, and he waved to the audience everywhere. He enjoyed the shouts and cheers from all directions. The appearance of Chen Qi appeared on the big screen, dressed simply, but revealed the unique youthful feeling of this age. The neat short hair, the bright smile, and the slender figure have made countless girls cry out for it. However, the rest of the contestants frowned tightly, observing this current favorite to win the championship. They are eager to know more information about Chen Qi, and want to know the current strength of that combuskin. But Gong Ruonin, who was sitting in the auditorium, knew that people like herself might not be able to see that Blaziken. Blaziken, which is enough to compete with professional-level Pokemon, cannot appear in the freshman exchange competition. She was convinced of it. On the other side, Chen Qi's rival Xu Shengping was also standing on the battlefield, with a bright smile on his face, waving to the audience and nodding to Chen Qi. Despite the bad luck, this may be my last game of this freshman exchange competition, he said. But I will do my best to impress you, all the audience, and parents, Xu Shengping said. There was no commentator in the main match, and the two stood on their respective command seats under the leadership of the staff. The referee walked to the center of the field and waited for it. The venue gradually quieted down, only the sound of breathing one after another. Everyone can't help but sit up straight and stare at the two people on the field. On the big screen, the heads of Chen Qi and Xu Shengping collided with each other and the VS logo appeared. Please send out your own Pokemon. The referee raised the flag and said loudly. After the words fell, the two looked at each other and threw their respective Pokeballs at the same time. Go, Inwolfdog, go, Metang. With a bang, a gray Mightyena appeared on the field. As an evolved form of Kuchina, Mightyena has black hair on its tail, back, and limbs, and its eyes are scarlet. Pokemon. Mightyena Evil. Ability. Intimidate. Qualification. Gym. Level. LV29 Senior. This Mightyena's aptitude is only gym level. Looking at the aptitude of this Mightyena, Chen Qi, who is used to master level or even elite level aptitude, was slightly surprised. At the same time, after the appearance of Metang, there was a short period of calm in the venue, and then there was deafening cheers. Metig was steadily suspended in the midair of the field, and the slanting sunlight shone on its silver body, giving it a slight luster. Flash Metang. First Flash Gardevoir, then Flash Metang, really a shiny Pokemon wholesaler. As expected of a descendant of Elite. No, the descendants of normal Elite don't have such luxury. After posting this barrage, Lu Bin took back his mobile phone, looked at Metang on the field, and said with emotion, there are gaps between the children of aristocratic families. Lu Yan glanced at him sideways, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. You two have a quasi-god Pokemon and a quasi-god Flash, how dare you say that in front of me? At this time, the expressions of the rest of the players in the auditorium changed. They are not watching the fun like ordinary audiences, they are here to collect information. Gardevoir was sent out for the knockout round, and Metig was sent for the main match. Isn't this Metig stronger than Gardevoir? Someone swallowed and said in a hoarse voice. 3 elite Pokemon, what are you kidding? Someone couldn't believe it. It's a little far away, and it's impossible to judge the specific strength of this Metig. It's okay, you will know your strength as soon as the battle starts. If there are really 3 elite level Pokemon, the champion can just let him go. I don't want to meet this uncle. As soon as these words came out, many people nodded in agreement. Xu Shengping never thought that Chen Qi did not send out Gardevoir, but Metang instead. In order to deal with Gardevoir, he specifically let Mightyena play first. But I didn't expect. Seeing that the players on both sides were ready, the referee quickly waved down the flag, blew the whistle, and shouted, the game begins. Xu Shengping quickly adjusted his mental contest condition. No matter which Pokemon he was facing, he just had to go all out. What's more, Mightyena also has good attribute restraint against Medig. So thinking, he stretched out his arms and shouted, Mightyena, crunch. Roar. Mightyena raised her head to the sky and roared loudly, and because of her intimidation ability, Medig's attack was reduced to a certain extent. Then, it took a step forward and rushed 400 towards Metatang at an astonishing speed, and then opened its ferocious mouth, sharp fangs flashing with sharp light. Brick break. Looking at Mightyena who was attacking quickly, Chen-Chi looked calm and spoke calmly. Meadow. Medig's eyes froze, and he refused to avoid the rushing Mightyena. His saffron-colored claws turned into hand knives, white light bloomed, and he slashed down. On the big screen, the two Pokémon were close at hand. Mightyena bit Metang, and Metang's hand knife slashed from top to bottom. Boom! In the next second, Mightyena's head was slashed with a knife in his hand, as if a rush of distance came, and an unimaginably severe pain spread from the top of the head to the whole body. Roar! Suddenly, Mightyena wailed in pain, her eyes dimmed quickly, her waist and abdomen tightened, and she fell straight to the ground. Boom! Mightyena fell onto the green grass, her eyes circled, and she fell into a coma. Contest condition. The referee was stunned when he saw this scene, but he quickly recovered and shouted, Mightyena has lost the ability to fight. In the venue, there was a dead silence. For a moment, warm cheers and shouts came from all directions, surrounding Chen-Chi. Another elite Pokémon, please be human. It feels like Metang is more violent than Gardevoir. The competition committee. Give Chen-Chi the award directly, I don't want to face him. Not to mention the gloomy-looking contestants, not to mention the ordinary-looking Gong Ruonin, just Shu Shengping at this moment has an extraordinarily rich expression. Who I am. Where am I? What should I do? The battle has just begun, why is it over? Please take back the Pokémon. The referee's voice rang in Shu Shengping's ear, interrupting his Guanjin contest condition. Shu Shengping quickly took back Mightyena, and took out the second Pokeball instead. This is him. Last hope. It's up to you, Arcanine. Shu Shengping raised his hand and sent out a Pokeball, forming a perfect arc. A beam of red light fell on the green grass. Ah! Arcanine landed on the ground and roared upwards, her eyes wide open, her flaxen hair fluttering in the wind, and her huge body was covered with tiger-like black and orange stripes. This is the Arcanine in the ancient legends of Dongwang, with a majestic appearance and breathtaking roar, immediately impressed countless audiences present. Shu Shengping's Arcanine breeder is excellent, with soft and beautiful hair, piercing eyes, and thick limbs. Pokémon. Arcanine, Fire. Ability. Heart of Justice. Qualification. Elite. Level. LV29, Senior. Shu Shengping watched his own Arcanine calmly, his eyes reflected the scene when he first met Growlithe, played with him, grew up together, became stronger together, and defeated countless rivals together. Finally, the two of them stood together on such a grand stage, facing the mighty rival that was almost impossible to defeat. But the game is not only the result that is the most important. The process is equally important. Looking at Arcanine who was waiting in full force, Shu Shengping's restless heart gradually calmed down. He exhaled lightly, and then raised his eyes to look at Chen-Chi opposite, that rival who looked like the great demon king normal. The game begins. Seeing that the players on both sides are ready, the referee waved down the flag again and shouted loudly. The audience held their breath. Arcanine's deep black pupils meet Metang's big blood-red eyes. Flamethrower. Shu Shengping shouted directly. Arcanine still has an attribute advantage against Medig. But this is a Medig that broke through to elite status early on. Ah! Arcanine opened her bloody mouth wide, and the gorgeous orange flame surged in it, and in an instant it gathered into a thick and extremely hot pillar of fire, rushing out towards Medig. Facing this menacing flamethrower, Chen-Chi's eyes were clear, and he said, now it is. Meadow. Medig responded in a low voice, its eyes reflected the scorching flames that came quickly, and immediately folded its arms to protect its chest. In the next second, a heat wave rolled in, and endless flames rushed towards him, completely devouring Medig. Does it work? Countless viewers leaned forward, wanting to see if the flamethrower had a good effect on Medig. Saw. The flames gradually dissipated, Medig slowly lowered his arms, his eyes were shining, and his silver body was unscathed. How is this possible? Looking at this scene, Shu Doef's pupils shrank suddenly, his face full of disbelief. Metatang was restrained twice by his fire skills, so how could he catch a flamethrower unscathed? He couldn't believe the scene he saw in front of him. Chu Wai put his hands on his thighs, smiled lightly, and explained, the difference in strength between the two Pokémon is too great. Combined with the excellent defense of Metatang itself, it is not surprising that it was unscathed. Just like Shinji challenged the Cabbage Sister in the animation, Garchomp didn't have the idea of avoiding Shinji's Pokémon at all, and just took it directly. Strength is the greatest confidence. Extreme speed. Seeing that the flamethrower didn't work, Shu Sheng calmed down and roared again. All of a sudden, Arcanine strode towards Metang. Her vigorous figure was as light as a swallow, and a white light bloomed, heading towards Metang lunge. Boom! A sonic boom suddenly exploded. An emerald green barrier instantly appeared around Metang, blocking all of Arcanine's extreme speed attacks. Moments later, the emerald green barrier shattered with a creak. What a quick response! Someone exclaimed in amazement. Chen Qi raised his eyebrows, looked at Arcanine on the opposite side lightly, and shouted, "Fix it, earthquake." Meadow. After the voice fell, Metag's figure flickered and came to the edge of the field. Then, Metag roared, and the two golden iron fists in front of him, like drill bits normal, smashed down on the ground. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Metag punched ground continuously, forming shock waves one after another. And these shock waves were superimposed in an instant, and the mountains collapsed in an instant, the entire battlefield shattered cracks, and the ground collapsed downwards. Is this really the destructive power that an elite-level Pokémon can cause? Someone said dumbfounded. My evaluation is, Invincible. Seeing this, Shu Shengping bit his lower lip tightly, thought for a moment, and shouted in despair, Arcanine, agility. Ah! Arcanine shook her body to make herself lighter, then ran out on the ground, turned into an afterimage, dodged the sinking ground at a terrifying speed, and rushed towards Metag. But the speed of the ground sinking was too fast, and the huge rumbling roar exploded in the ears one after another, and the dust and smoke filled the entire battlefield. Finally, when Arcanine ran to the center of the field, the ground under her feet sank suddenly, her face sank, she lost her center of gravity, and was swallowed by the deep pit. The venue gradually calmed down, and the dust and smoke disappeared. Only Arcanine fell into the deep pit and closed her eyes. Arcanine is incapacitated. Therefore, the winner is Chen Qi. The referee raised the flag representing Chen Qi high and blew the whistle to announce the end of the game. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the venue was pushed to the climax, and thunderous applause sounded instantly. Magic City Competitive Sports Arena. In the boiling venue, countless audiences showed fanatical expressions. On the big screen, that handsome, breezy, black-haired young man is deeply imprinted in everyone's mind. This is the strength of the favorite to win the championship. Someone exclaimed. What is the favorite to win the championship? This is the champion of this year. Speaking of a more terrifying thing, Chen Qi's combustion has not yet appeared. To be honest, I'm already looking forward to the evolved Flash Metagross. Southwest Frontier. The rolling hills lie across the border, within a restricted area. Chen Wei looked at Chen Qi and Metang on the big screen with a slight smile on his face. Almost, he said softly. Kunlun University. Yang Yi's excited growl sounded in the girls' dormitory. Ah, handsome and strong, I declare Chen Qi to be my idol. There was a slight smile on Chu Yuning's face, and her eyes remained on Chen Qi. Chen Qi and Shu Shengping walked to the center of the venue and shook hands. I thought there would be a wonderful duel. Shu Shengping smiled bitterly, and suddenly said. Chen Qi looked at him seriously, and replied, as long as you try your best, this will be a wonderful duel. Shu Shengping was stunned for a moment, then a smile appeared on his face. Thanks. He waved his hand, turned and left the battlefield. Since then, Shu Shengping from Lucheng University was eliminated in the first round, bidding farewell to the freshman exchange competition. But no one laughed at him. Everyone knew in their hearts that if they faced Chen Qi, the ending would only be more miserable. Chen Qi left the arena, and the next match will begin immediately. Not long after, he sat on the spectator seats of the Imperial University players, watching the rest of the competition. I thought you would continue to send Gardevoir. Lu Bin beside him said. Chen Qi smiled and replied, every Pokémon must be experienced. Lu Bin's eyes flickered, and he asked, what about Blaziken? Chen Qi thought for a moment, then replied, "It's the same." Hearing Chen Qi's answer, Lu Bin fell into a brief silence. After a while, he scratched his head, shook his head and said, "You really don't show any respect to rival." During the discussion, Bai Rang proceeded in an orderly manner one after another. There are fierce battles with no distinction between equals, and there are also one-sided crushing battles. But until several games later, everyone still can't forget the metig that caused the terrible earthquake. After a while, half a day was lost. The 6 contestants from Imperial University all finished the first round of the competition. Among them, the 2 passers-by contestants unfortunately encountered strong opponents and unfortunately lost. In fact, this is also normal. Although Imperial University and Modu University are the top universities side by side, in recent years, they have long lost their previous terrorist dominance. From time to time, strong players from other schools will emerge to break the monopoly and become champions. 6 people eliminated 2 people, and 4 people advanced to the next round, which is already considered a good result. But the following matches will only become more cruel and bloody. 32-16, 16-8, and advanced to the final. The second round of the race started soon, and this time Chen Qi was not the first to play. Lu Bin took the lead to play, and his elite Gabite showed its terrifying strength, directly defeated the 2 Pokemon of rival, and won the first victory. Shen Weiyue then played. Her Gothita has evolved into Gothorita, for the victory. The third is Lu Yan's debut. His Wartortle is still one step away from the elite level. But as long as it can win, it is a good thing. Chen Qi was the last to appear. This time rival is a student of Nanhua University, and they are also 2 Pokemon that are infinitely close to the elite level. Chen Qi still dispatched Medig to win the victory in a devastating manner, and the whole game was full of suspense. Since then, the second round of competition ended when night fell. Chen Qi, Lu Bin, Lu Yan and Shen Weiyue all won and entered the top 16. Dozens of colleges and universities participated in the competition, and only one school, Imperial Capital University, occupied 4 places. This result was beyond Teacher Chin's expectation. The rest of the players are very good, and you all must be very careful. Most of the players have elite-level Pokemon. Teacher Chin said with a solemn expression, looking at Lu Yan. He's the only one of the 4 that doesn't have an elite Pokemon. When the tournament got to the main draw, a handful of players sent out their elite Pokemon for the first time, much to the detriment of many. Yes, in this year's freshman exchange competition Hidden Dragon and Crouching Tiger, several players waited until the main match to send elite Pokemon. Lu Bin sighed because of this. Look, I said that the information is not very useful, and many people are hiding it. Chen Qi nodded in agreement. In fact, this is also in line with the temperament of Dongwang people. They always keep a hand of cards and are caught off guard when they beat rival. That's why I keep saying that the times are developing and society is progressing. Chin teacher interrupted after hearing the discussion between the 2. In the freshman exchange competition more than 10 years ago, there were almost no elite Pokemon figures. Nowadays, with the rapid development of society, several elite Pokemon have appeared. Lu Bin nodded slightly, and said with emotion, so I said, maybe in the main game stage many years later, it is very likely that everyone will have an elite Pokemon. Not impossible. Chin teacher nodded. Okay, you guys have a good rest tonight, and face tomorrow's game with the best contest conditions. Teacher Chin clapped his hands and said with a smile. By the way, tomorrow's. The battle arrangement should be out soon, remember to take a look. Li Le Jiao. After dinner, everyone returned to their respective rooms. Hey, Chen Qi, there's a post about you that's been trending. Lu Bin suddenly handed the phone back. Chen Qi took the phone and looked down. The topic of the post is, why Chen Qi has already booked the champion of this freshman exchange competition. The content of the post is, recently, the freshman exchange competition is in full swing, and everyone should pay attention to it. I will talk about the most discussed contestant in this freshman exchange competition. Chen Qi patrols. According to information collected on the internet, Chen Qi was born in the Chen family in southern Sichuan City, the grandson of King Chen Tian. After reading this, you should understand that Chen Qi's background is very deep. Some people may say that Chen Qi is not relying on the fact that he is a descendant of an aristocratic family, Pokemon progresses so fast, and you can exchange identities. I tell you clearly, no no no. Take a good look everyone, there are many elite relatives in this freshman exchange competition, including Elite's nephew Lu Bin, but are their dominance as terrifying as Chen Qi owned an elite Pokemon? After thinking about it carefully, there may be a slight possibility of 2 elite-level psychic Pokemon. After all, Chen Qi was born into a psychic family. But as far as I know so far, Chen Qi owned an elite Combusken during his field military training 1.5 months ago. Year's record, becoming number 1. In a family of superpowers, the first Pokemon is Combusken, and the progress of Combusken is outrageous. Let me ask, which family member can do this? So I said, Chen Qi has already booked the champion of this year. Medic and Gardevoir may not be the most difficult, and the Combusken, which has no news for a long time, is the last big one. Boss. Good. After reading this post, Chen Qi commented sincerely. Now many players are studying how to beat his Gardevoir and Metang, but subconsciously ignore Combusken or Blaziken. But don't blame them, after all, they couldn't solve the first 2 Pokemon, and it was impossible for Chen Qi to send Blaziken. Hateful. At this time, Lu Bin was staring at one of the passages viciously, subconsciously clenched his fists. Chen Qi chuckled, and suddenly noticed that his cell phone vibrated slightly. He took it out and saw that it was a message from the official website of the competition. Chen Qi, your game number tomorrow is 8, rival is Zhang Xiu from South Sichuan University. At the same time, the same notification also appeared on Lu Bin's mobile phone. The number of sessions is 8. That's the last game. Wait, South Sichuan University. Chen Qi's eyes flickered. Chen Ma is a professor at the breeder department of South Sichuan University. Thoughts flashed. Chen Qi and Lu Bin began to collect information on rival. Zhang Xiu from South Sichuan University has an elite Pokemon. The other side, South Sichuan University stayed in the hotel. In a huge room, coaching and the 6 players were all waiting for the announcement of the battle list. Well, although in the end only Gong Ruonin and Zhang Xiu advanced to the final round, the other 4 players were all just watching the show. But there are 2 players who advanced to the top 16, and everyone is honored. Being able to occupy 2 seats in the top 16, South Sichuan University has broken its previous record and is continuing to move forward. The upcoming rivals are very strong. Many players have elite-level Pokemon. You two must be very careful. The coaching teacher who led the team looked solemn and said slowly. Don't worry, I won't underestimate every player. Zhang Xiu smiled slightly, his face full of confidence. I will work hard. Gong Ruonin nodded slightly. The other 4 contestants chattered and discussed. Hey, do you think Ruonan and Xiu can make it to the final? Someone asked. You don't even need to ask, it's a must. Both Ruonin and Xiu have elite-level Pokemon, they are very competitive, and they have a great possibility of reaching the finals. Yes, as long as you don't meet Chen Qi, you have every chance of defeating other players. When the name of Chen Qi sounded, the room suddenly fell silent. It was as if a great demon king descended into the world, and the heavy atmosphere overwhelmed everyone. After a while, someone weakly said, Have you read the post about Chen Qi on the internet? I must have seen it. Someone replied without hesitation. The author who wrote this post guessed that Metang and Gardevoir are next. The biggest threat is the Liwang chicken, which has not appeared in Song Dynasty for a long time. Forget it, so many players can't even beat Gardevoir and Metang, so why talk about Combusken? Don't talk about defeat, it's not bad if you don't get killed in seconds, someone said quietly. Zhang Xiu silently listened to the discussion of the 4, and interjected, Indeed, I'm in the game with Empress Chen. I'm not rival, he said calmly, truthfully. Just wish my rival wasn't him. At the same time, the message alert sounded on the phone. Zhang Xiu and Gong Ruonin looked down at the phone at the same time. Coaching teacher and the other 4 knew that tomorrow's battle list was coming out. They held their breath and stared closely at the BCDE too, expecting their reaction. Gong Ruonin read it quietly, her eyes flickered, then she looked up at coaching teacher and said, Qin Zui from Fengcheng University. The coaching teacher's eyes flickered when he heard the words, carefully recalled the information about this person, and then nodded slightly, it's okay. Gong Ruonin shouldn't have a big problem facing this Qin Mo. Afterwards, everyone looked at Zhang Xihia. Under everyone's gaze, Zhang Xiu bit his lips lightly, then he raised his eyes to look at coaching teacher, then lowered his eyes and said softly, Emperor Capital University. Chen Qi. The voice fell, and the huge room was a dead city. The coaching teacher didn't know how to evaluate Zhang Xiu's luck for a while. He pondered his words for a long time, and finally broke the silence of the dead normal. Xiu, listen to me. Everyone turned to look at coaching teacher. First, things have been determined. We can't change it. We can only face this game with the best contest conditions and strive to show our own style. When Zhang Xiu heard these words, his eyes flickered slightly, and he nodded slightly. Seeing Zhang Xiu nodding, the coaching teacher continued. Second point, the competition hasn't started yet, everything is unknown. Although Chen Qi's strength is indeed much higher than that of his peers, we must always have confidence in ourselves before the competition. If you lose confidence early, it is tantamount to failure. Zhang Xiu listened carefully, and finally nodded seriously. Thank you, teacher. He thanked him sincerely. At this time, Gong Ruonan suddenly said, I have a suggestion. As soon as these words came out, everyone looked at Gong Ruonan with slightly surprised eyes. Gong Ruonan, who was always silent at ordinary times, would take the initiative to offer suggestions. Facing everyone's surprised eyes, Gong Ruonan looked calm, and said slowly, put all your energy on Gardevoir and Matang, don't think about Combustion. Why? Zhang Xiu was slightly taken aback, wondering. He also read that post, and it was indeed very reasonable. Combustion might be Chen Qi's real trump card. Although the format of the game is 2v2, if Chen Qi sends Combustion directly after defeating Metagross or Gardevoir, he will inevitably encounter this Pokémon who has already broken through to the elite level. In Zhang Xiu's vision, Chen Qi should not send out Gardevoir and Metagross at the same time. These two Pokémon attributes overlap somewhat, so it is not wise to send out at the same time. The first one sends out Metagross or Gardevoir, the second one sends out Combustion, and that's the real match. Gong Ruonan replied, because in this freshman exchange competition, there is no Pokémon that is the Blaziken's rival. Blaziken. The coaching teacher was slightly taken aback. Gong Ruonan's lips moved, and then said, I went to the imperial capital last week to seek advice from Master Ji Yushi, and there I met Chen Qi. Meet Chen Qi's Blaziken and see Blaziken beat pro-level Holicha firsthand. Wait, professional level Holicha. Zhang Xiu shrank his pupils, not daring to say anything. The amount of information in this passage was too great for him to digest for a while. Aren't you kidding? Zhang Xiu continued. At the same time, the rest of the people all had unbelievable expressions on their faces. Defeating a pro-level Holicha, who are you kidding? Can Pokémon really do it at this stage? Gong Ruonan looked at them with calm eyes, and said, I don't know how to joke. His Combustion evolved into Blaziken long ago, beating pro-level Holicha at an elite level. This Blaziken is invincible. October 22nd, on the second day of the race. In the competitive sports arena in Shanghai, colorful flags are fluttering and people are buzzing. Chen Qi sat on the auditorium, quietly waiting for the start of the game. First up is Lu Bin, who takes the lead with Tyrant, defeating rival's first Pokémon. Subsequently, Tyrant was defeated by rival's second elite Pokémon. Lu Bin sent Gabite, and after a fierce battle, he won. Lu Bin returned to the auditorium and grinned. I'll advance to the finals first, and I'll wait for you. Shen Weiyue and Chen Qi nodded slightly, while Lu Yan clenched his fists. One game after another, Shen Weiyue soon appeared on the stage. She crushed rival with a tyrannical posture, showed her heroism, and won the victory. In the afternoon, Lu Yan appeared. His rival has an elite Pokémon, which is very powerful. In the end, Lu Yan's Wartortle fought fiercely with the elite Pokémon for a long time, but in the end they fell short and lost. It's okay, it's already a very, very good result for you to break into the top 16. Chin teacher reassured. This is true. Seriously speaking, Lu Yan broke into the top 16 in the freshman exchange competition, which means that he is enough to rank 16 among the freshmen of the same class. This scope includes all combat students. At the same time, Tan Shi sat in front of the computer, pointed at Lu Yan on the screen, and laughed at the rest of the roommates. See, this is my cousin. The top 16 of the freshman exchange competition. He laughed, his tone excited and excited. When Lu Yan was sad, his cousin, his parents, and his relatives were all proud of him. Some people are happy, some people are sad, but the game still has to go on. After Lu Yan was eliminated, Chen Qi came to the players' lounge and waited to enter. Let us welcome the 2 contestants in the last match with warm applause. Host said passionately. Chen Qi put the Pokeball back on his waist and walked into the contestants' tunnel. The walls on both sides thumped because of the enthusiastic cheers and shouts of the audience. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, and he stepped out of the shadows, stepped on the green grass, and looked up at the audience in all directions. Endless cheers hit him like a tide, drowning him. At the same time, Zhang Xiu took a deep breath, walked to the command seat, raised his eyes and stared at Chen Guan, who was opposite him. That existence is like the great demon Lord Normal. No, at this moment, in the bottom of Zhang Xiu's heart, Chen Qi is an existence more terrifying than the great demon king. Can beat a pro-level Blaziken. Hey, is there still a need for a battle? He lowered his eyes and smiled bitterly. But when he heard the sound of cheering for himself from the stands, Zhang Xiu was stunned, and then slowly raised his head. It's all here. It's better. Try your best to fight. Magic City Competitive Sports Arena. The audience gradually quieted down. Like the silence before endless cheers, they all looked at the 2 contestants on the battlefield. One is Chen Qi from Imperial University, who is the favorite to win the freshman exchange competition and who is scheduled to be the champion. One is Zhang Xichen from Zhongnan University, a dark horse who broke into the top 16 with astonishing momentum. The heads of Chen Qi and Zhang Seiwu appeared on the big screen, and the VS logo appeared at the moment they collided with each other. Please send out your own Pokemon. The referee saw both sides standing on their respective command seats, raised their flags, and said loudly. Chen Qi took off the luxury ball from his waist without extra fanciful movements, and suddenly released it. White light flickered, and the silver Metig suspended in midair steadily, attracting warm cheers. At the same time, Zhang Xiu threw a Pokeball violently. It's up to you, Charmander. With the sound of dong, the duck-billed fire dragon landed on the field. The flame above its head was burning fiercely, and there was a fire-like pattern on its abdomen. Pokemon. Duck-bill Charmander, Fire. Ability. Body of Fire. Qualification. Elite. Level. LV30 Elite. Duck-billed Charmander. The typical name has a dragon, but the attribute has no dragon. The first elite-level Pokemon I met in the freshman exchange competition. Looking at the duck-billed fire dragon in front of him, Chen Qi sighed slightly. He inquired about Zhang Xiu's information yesterday, and this duck-billed fire dragon is Zhang Xiu's trump card Pokemon. He only dispatched the duck-billed fire dragon in the main match stage, so he won 2 victories in one fell swoop and advanced to the top 16. Unfortunately, I met Chen Qi. The duck-billed Charmander stared blankly at Metig. The flames on the top of the head and tail continued to rise, and the surface of the body continued to produce flames and heat waves like the sun, and the surrounding temperature gradually increased. It is said that the Charmander was born and raised in the volcano, and loves places where the temperature is high. Seeing that the players on both sides were getting ready, the referee waved down the flag and said loudly, "The match begins." As soon as the words fell, Chen Qi and Zhang Xiu looked at each other and spoke at the same time. Duck-billed Charmander, Flamethrower. Metang, dodge it. Facing the flamethrower used by the elite-level fire-type Pokemon, Metang naturally cannot rely on the big ones, and needs to be faced with caution. A light curtain of fire emerged from the duck-billed fire dragon's body, and a scorching flame shot up into the sky. It opened its mouth and spit out a thick pillar of fire, attacking Metang. The heat wave is rolling, the fire dragon is roaring, and the astonishing temperature makes the battlefield heat up rapidly. Metig's eyes froze, and it almost turned into a silver lightning, flying extremely fast in midair. Roar! Flamethrower chased after Metig, and the flames were raging, chasing the figure of Metig. But Metang's flying speed was even faster, crossing most of the field in a snap, and Sucker Punch landed behind the duck-billed fire dragon. Aerial Ace. Chen Qi snapped. Meadow. Metig responded in a low voice, and approached the duck-billed fire dragon with agile movements in the next second, and at the same time waved his fist shining with saffron color luster. Boom! The powerful fist hit the back of the duck-billed fire dragon, causing pain in its back, and it staggered, almost falling to the ground with its center of gravity unstable. Behind. Fire punch. Seeing this, Zhang Xiu thought for a moment and spoke quickly. Roar. The duck-billed fire dragon let out a furious roar. It resisted the pain in its back and quickly turned to face Metang. At the same time, its fists were entangled in the flames, and it waved towards Metang. Boom. Fire punch hits Metang precisely, right in the face, sparks fly, and ember spreads. Very good. Looking at this scene, Zhang Xiu's eyes lit up, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. But in the next second, he was suddenly dumbfounded. The Metang hit by the fire punch is like a hot air balloon that has been punctured, blowing away with the wind in an instant. Substitute. Wen's substitute. Seeing this, Zhang Xiu's eyes widened and he shouted in disbelief. Above the stands, Chu Wai folded his arms and said with a slight smile, after aerial ace hit, Metang used substitute. After all, Metang is at an attribute disadvantage against the duck-billed Charmander. If he is hit by fire punch, he will be at great risk. Chen Qi is so cautious. Lu Bin on the side. Field. The real Metang has already arrived at the corner of the venue. Its eyes glowed with purple light, and the tyrannical super energy fluctuations suddenly erupted at this moment, the entire venue. What a scary psychic, someone exclaimed. Chen Qi is a descendant of a superpower family, what do you think? I seem to be witnessing with my own eyes the unstoppable rise of a future super elite. Some people are feeling emotional. The terrifying psychic completely enveloped the duck-billed Charmander, who was in a bewildered contest condition, making it unable to move. At the same time, psychic brutally invaded his mind, setting off a violent storm, raging his spiritual mind over and over again. Roar. The duck-billed fire dragon held its head in both hands and wailed in pain, obviously it was in extreme pain. Duck-billed Charmander. Seeing this scene, Zhang Xiu stretched out his arms and shouted anxiously. Helplessness, despair, fear, all kinds of emotions are intertwined in a moment, covering Zhang Xiu's mind. Half an hour. The back of the duck-billed fire dragon was soaked in cold sweat. It swayed and finally collapsed to the ground with a plop. The referee didn't even have to lower his head to check the situation of the duck-billed fire dragon, and directly shouted, the duck-billed fire dragon loses its ability to fight. On the big screen, Zhang Xiu stood blankly on the command seat, staring blankly at the duck-billed fire dragon lying on the ground, and did not respond for a long time. It's broken, another unlucky guy who was beaten stupid by the big devil Chen. Professionals recommend it. Could someone come over and defeat Metang? I'm thinking of Combustion. Okay, next battle. In the noisy atmosphere, Zhang Xiu finally took the duck-billed fire dragon back into the Pokeball. Immediately, he raised his head, looked at the densely packed audience in all directions, and looked at Chen Qi, who was standing quietly opposite, with mixed emotions in his mind for a while. After a long while, he took off the second Pokeball, looked down, and his eyes became more and more determined. Please, Persian. After the words fell, Persian's figure appeared on the field, and his beautiful and smooth hair was eye-catching. Pokemon. Persian, normal. Ability. Technical Master. Qualification. Master. Level. LV29, Senior. Zhang Xiu relied on this powerful Persian to defeat the rivals in the knockout round and advance to the main match. Game start. Seeing Zhang Xiu send out the second Pokemon, the referee waved down the flag again, announcing the start of the game again. Brick break. Chen Qi suddenly said. Meadow. Metang ordered, folded his arms, his speed increased sharply, and he attacked Persian at a high speed. Shadow Claw. Seeing that Metang's speed was too amazing, Zhang Xiu decided to face it head-on. Meow. Persian stretched out his sharp claws, and the shadow energy was attached to them, with a terrifying aura. The Metatang saffron-colored claws glowed with sharp white light, turning into hand knives and slashing violently. Boom. The two Pokemon looked at each other, and at this moment the most intense collision occurred, and sparks flew everywhere. But the confrontation between the two Pokemon was only a stalemate for a moment, and soon Persian was retreating steadily. Its muscles tensed up and its eyes were fierce, but it still couldn't save its disadvantage. Persian's feet plowed 2 deep ravines. Finally, it was powerless to fight against Metang. It trembled slightly, and then was thrown several meters away by Metang. Persian. Seeing this, Zhang Xiu shouted. At this moment, Persian performed a backflip in midair with his excellent physical fitness, and then landed firmly on the ground. But even so, its current contest condition is not good. While panting heavily, it raised its eyes and stared at Medig with cold red vertical pupils. Medig was flying around in midair, excited by successive victories. Shadow Ball. Zhang Xiu gritted his teeth and decided to launch a final blow, stretching his arms and shouting. Meow. Persian raised his head to the sky and screamed, then opened his mouth, and instantly gathered an extremely black shadow ball, and shot it towards Medig with a bang. Agility. Chen Qi calmly spoke with a calm gaze. After receiving the instruction, Medig focused his eyes, making his body lighter, and his speed increased sharply again. With a sweep of his body, he easily avoided the shadow ball. Boom! The shadow ball exploded on the ground, sending up a puff of black smoke. At the same time, Medig is already approaching Persian, and under the illumination of spotlight, the saffron-colored arms are shining with a slight luster. The pair of fists were as fast and hard as bullets, and one punch after another hit Persian's body, making him scream in pain and unable to resist. A lower uppercut. The iron fist hit the top of Persian's head, and the powerful force directly made him fall to the ground. His head came into close contact with ground, and his limbs fell to the ground. Call. The battlefield gradually returned to calm, and Medig slowly flew to Chen Qi, calmly watching Persian who fell on the ground. The referee glanced at it, and in the next second raised the flag representing Chen Qi, and said, Persian is incapable of fighting. Therefore, the winner is Chen Qi. At the same time, Zhang Xiu's avatar suddenly went out on the big screen, and Chen Qi's avatar took over the entire screen. As soon as the voice fell, the venue suddenly boiled, and a wave of cheers and applause poured in, surrounding Chen Guan. Gong Ruonan sat quietly on the spot, letting the cheers and applause erupt. At this moment, she looked at Chen Qi from afar, and the fighting spirit in her eyes grew stronger. I will stand with Lucario on the stage of the final. Challenge to use spoon. At sunset on October 22nd. With the end of the match between Chen Qi and Zhang Xiu, all the matches in the main race came to an end. Under the leadership of the staff, the 8 contestants who successfully advanced to the final stood on the battlefield, enjoying the cheers and applause from the audience and countless netizens. Chen Qi, Lu Bin, Shen Weiyue, Gong Ruonan, as well as 2 players from Modu University and 2 players from Qirong School. Chin Teacher was so happy from ear to ear in the stands that his palms were already red. The 3 contestants entered the final hand in hand. Imperial University has not had such a good result for many years. There is no doubt that Imperial University is slowly recovering the terror suppression it had many years ago. Imperial Capital University go 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 go. Keep the championship at Tito University. Modu University is number 1. South Sichuan University, give me a rush. Countless netizens sent bullet screens in the live broadcast room, and the popularity soared. This year's freshman exchange competition was extremely popular, far exceeding the previous ones, and it aroused extensive discussions on the internet. In the past, the audience of the freshman exchange competition was almost only college students and a few social people, but this time many social people joined in and discussed with college students. Green grass. The 8 finalists stood in a row, enjoying the applause and cheers from all directions. They looked up at the big screen, waiting for tomorrow's battle list to appear. Since there is only one day for the final, the schedule is very tight, with the quarterfinals in the morning, the semifinals in the afternoon, and the finals in the evening. The main reason is that the format of the freshman exchange match is 2v2, and the duration of each match is relatively short, so the schedule is very tight. This situation will be much better when it comes to the College Student League and the East Huang Conference. Under the anticipation of everyone, information slowly emerged on the big screen. Lu Bin vs Huang Rui. Huang Rui, the strongest freshman in a certain university, owns an elite-level Pokemon, which is very powerful. Seeing this, Lu Bin turned his head to look at Huang Rui, and it happened that Huang Rui also turned his head to look at him. The eyes of the 2 collided in midair, and the invisible aura spread around. Subsequently, the screen changes accordingly. Shen Weiyue vs Lanyan. After seeing this line of words, Shen Weiyue lowered her eyes and showed a faint smile on her face. Lanyan, a player from Shanghai University, has an elite ghost-type Pokemon, and defeated Shen Wei once in the knockout stage. After going around for a while, the 2 actually met again in the final, which is really a wonderful fate. Lan Yun narrowed her eyes slightly. She didn't turn her head to look at Shen Weiyui, but the corners of her mouth were slightly raised, her face was full of confidence. After that, the information on the screen changed again. Gong Ruonan vs Yan Ling. Yan Ling, a player from a certain university, has an elite Pokemon, and is a good rival for Gong Ruonan. Pity. Seeing this, Gong Ruonan lowered his head, secretly regretting. At the same time, the venue gradually boiled up, and the cheers were louder and louder. Up to now, although there is still the last group left on the battle list, everyone knows it in their hearts. Chen Qi vs Zhang Zihao. Zhang Zihao, the first place in the field military training of this year's Shanghai Metropolitan University, deserves to be the strongest freshman. He was born in the Zhang family, a top-notch family. The Zhang family has been passed down for hundreds of thousands of years in Dongwang. Among them, several elites and a champion have been born, and their family background is prominent. At the beginning of the freshman exchange competition, Zhang Zihao and Chen Qi were both popular players and strong contenders for the championship. In the knockout stage, Zhang Zihao, like Chen Qi and Lu Bin, advanced with a proud record of all victories. As the freshman exchange competition continues, countless viewers believe that Chen Qi is the only one, Zhang Zihao and Lu Bin are the first, and the rest of the players are behind. However, in the quarterfinals, the two players with strong competitiveness for the championship met in advance. Broken. When the coaching teacher of Shanghai University saw the battle list, his complexion changed slightly. Zhang Zihao definitely has the strength to get close to the finals, but the premise is that he can't meet Chen Qi. Now that he meets Chen Qi, he is likely to be eliminated early and stop at the quarterfinals. In the imagination of this coaching teacher, it is not bad for Lan Yun to meet Shen Weiyui. After all, she has already defeated her once, and the chances of winning are very high. As long as Zhang Zihao doesn't meet Chen Qi, other players are fine, even Lu Bin. Yes, Chung Kai-ho faced Lu Bin in a 50-50 split, each had a chance of winning. But Zhang Zihao faced Chen Qi. The coaching teacher knows all too well that his odds are slim. Countless netizens also exploded. It's broken, the popular contestant has encountered ahead of time. Matter University is in danger. Zhang Hao can declare the death penalty in advance, and the rest is up to Lan Yun. Quote. Don't trust Zhang Zihao, maybe he can create a miracle. Green grass. The tall Zhang Zihao stretched his neck, then turned his head to look at Chen Qi, his eyes full of fighting spirit. As the strongest freshman at Shanghai University, he will not be timid before a fight, nor will he admit defeat in advance. Not long after, the 8 players left the arena under the leadership of the staff, and all the spectators also left in an orderly manner. Tonight is bound to be a busy day. Collect rival data, watch rival battle videos, and formulate corresponding tactics. Chen Qi and others took the bus and returned to the hotel. Chin teacher has already sorted out the rival information of the 3 of them, and studied with the 3 of them. The night deepens. The 3 returned to their rooms, began to rest, and faced tomorrow's final with the best contest conditions. October 23rd, morning. A competitive sports arena in Shanghai. Under the eyes of everyone, the finals of the freshman exchange competition officially started. In the first game, Lu Bin played against Huang Rui. The two fought fiercely for more than 10 minutes, and finally Gabite withstood the pressure and killed the enemy with one blow, giving Lu Bin the victory. Some underestimated the enemy. Afterwards, Lu Bin returned to the auditorium with a slightly heavy expression on his face. Judging from the current situation, except for Chen Qi, the gap between the rest of the players is not obvious, and the outcome is hard to predict. Maybe hard power is stronger, but the strength is limited, and it can be made up for by command. In the second round, Shen Weiyui played against Lan Yun. This time, Shen Weiyui chose to play it safe and steady, constantly pulling and consuming with Lan Yun, which made the latter very uncomfortable. Finally, after nearly 20 minutes of the dust battle, Shen Weiyui won with a slight advantage and advanced to the semifinals. After the match, Shen Weiyui rarely showed a smile, while Lan Yun beside her had a gloomy expression. Also, Lan Yun obviously has the attribute advantage, and has 2 ghost-type Pokemon in his hands, but he was defeated by Shen Weiyui. For the third time, Ruo Nan played against Yan Ling. Like the previous 2 games, this game was equally intense. Gong Ruonen's first Pokemon was defeated first, and then she dispatched General Lucario to win the victory with 1-2. Since then, only the last match is left. Chen Qi played against Zhang Zihao. Amid the warm cheers, Chen Qi and Zhang Zihao stood on the command seats on both sides, looking at each other from afar. It's bad. Imperial University is expected to dominate this year's freshman exchange competition. The semi-finals, Imperial University surrounds South Sichuan University. It depends on whether Zhang Zihao can create a miracle. Numerous audiences discussed. The venue gradually became quiet, only the clear whistle sounded, and the referee held up the flag, glanced back and forth, and said loudly, "Please send out your own Pokemon." Chen Qi took out the Pokeball, put it flat in the palm of his hand, and then pressed the button. A red light shot out, and Medic appeared on the field. Zhang Zihao looked indifferent. In order to face Chen Qi, he made full preparations last night and considered various plans. At this moment, it is time to see the outcome. Go, Poniard. Zhang Zihao threw a Pokeball violently. After the words fell, a humanoid Pokemon appeared on the green lawn. Its hands consisted of 2 sharp blades, and its whole body was covered with hard armor. The tawny eyes covered by the helmet were extremely cold, staring at Matang intently. Pokemon. Poniard Evil Steel. Ability. Don't admit defeat. Qualification. Elite. Qualification. LV29 Senior. Infinitely close to an elite Poniard. In all fairness, Poniard has a huge attribute advantage against Medig, and if it breaks through to the elite level, it will cause great trouble for Medig. But it's still senior level. Game start. Seeing that the players on both sides were ready, the referee waved down the flag and announced the start of the game. The two looked at each other and gave orders at the same time. Poniard, rush over and use Shadow Claw. Zhang Zihao shouted with calm eyes. Brick break. Chen Qi spoke with clear eyes. As soon as the two finished speaking, Poniard ran towards Metang. The red body danced on the green grass. Between the sparks, it rushed in front of Medig. All of a sudden, it swung its sharp blade, and the blade extended a terrifying shadow light, and the sharp breath flowed, and it slashed straight towards Matang. Meadow. Medig's eyes froze, and he refused to evade the incoming attack. The saffron-colored claws turned into hand knives, shining a sharp white light, and faced the attack directly. Boom. The two collided, accompanied by the screech sound of Chong Zhang Kun. Medig's sharp claws hit Poniard's hard armor, rubbing a series of sparks on it for a while. Meadow. Medig increased his strength again, swung his claws, and directly tore Poniard's armor, leaving a long trace. The latter was severely injured, and took several steps back again and again, with a bleak face. In the first round of head-to-head confrontation, Poniard was completely defeated by Matang and was crushed. Zhang Zihao had expected this scene a long time ago. His eyes flashed, and he stretched out his arms and shouted, "Dark Pulse." Poniard's eyes were tough, completely ignoring his own harm. His eyes were fixed, a dark red light gathered on his chest, malice and killing intent burst out suddenly. Dark Pulse, this is Zhang Zihao's hidden real killing move. Let the Poniard approach Metatang first, then use Dark Pulse at close range to ensure its hit rate. Light screen. Chen Qi spoke instantly. The Dark Pulse surged and hit the dazzling glass light screen that suddenly lit up in front of Medig. Bang, bang, bang. Dark Pulse suddenly hit the glass light screen, and then exploded with a bang. The deafening explosion sound continued for a moment, and then Dark Pulse was completely blocked by the light screen, unable to pose the slightest threat to Medig. How is it possible? Zhang Zihao shrank his pupils. Brick break, solve it. Chen Qi spoke calmly, following the final testimonial. Medig flew towards Poniard at a high speed. Within a short time Sucker Punch was in front of him, and the knife in his hand slashed down. Boom. The hand knife accurately hit Poniard, causing the latter to fall to the ground without moving. Poniard. Zhang Zihao shouted. Poniard was in a trance. His body moved, trying to get up and continue fighting, but the endless darkness. Devour it quickly. Poniard is incapacitated, the referee said. Zhang Zihao was stunned for a moment, then retracted the Poniard immediately, and raised his eyes to look at Chen Qi opposite. Despite being fully prepared, it's still so difficult. Zhang Ziji laughed at himself, then clenched the second Pokeball in his palm. After a while, his eyes changed, sharp as a knife, and he shouted, "Please, Dragonair." Oh, The Pokeball cover was opened, and the clear sound of dragon chants resounded in the midair of the venue. The blue, slender Dragonair was flying wantonly in the midair. Dragonair's whole body is covered with sapphire-colored scales, which bloom brilliantly under the illumination of the spotlights, and the bright white belly is exceptionally holy. It has a small white horn on its forehead and 2 small wings on both sides of its head. Pokemon. Dragonair Dragon. Ability. Magic Scale. Qualification. Champion. Level. LV32 Elite. Quasi-God Pokemon Dragonair with Champion level qualifications. As soon as Dragonair appeared, it immediately attracted the attention of most of the audience, and there were exclamations one after another. As a quasi-God Pokemon, Dragonair inhabits beautiful seas or lakes, and is known as a sacred Pokemon. The number of Dragonair is extremely rare, and now wild Dragonair can only be found in the depths of the vast ocean or in dangerous secret places. Moreover, Dragonair's appearance is one of the best among quasi-God Pokemon, although I don't know why it evolved into hypertrophy. In the last round of the Freshman Exchange Tournament, 2 quasi-God Pokemon met. I admit, Zhang Zihao raised his eyebrows and looked at Chen Qi, with a faint smile on his face. You are powerful enough to make rival despair. As soon as these words came out, the players who were ruthlessly eliminated by Chen Qi all nodded wildly. But you are not invincible. Suddenly, Zhang Zihao raised his right arm and pointed at Chen Qi, with a power-trip smile on his face. I will end your victory here. After Chen Qi listened quietly, he said, why don't you think about how to defeat Metang first? It's not over the warm-up phase yet. The dialogue between the two aroused heated discussions among countless netizens. Chen Qi. Back then I had my hands in my pockets and didn't know what rival was. Chen Qi. It doesn't matter, I have already started to study the Final 4 rival. Zhang Zihao. Get lost. After a while, the referee waved down the flag again and the game started. Dragonair, Rain Dance. Metang, rushed to use bullets. The voices of the two sounded at the same time. Hearing this, Dragonair raised its head to the sky and groaned. The blue beads on its neck and tail shone with a slight luster, and a huge power surged in it, spreading in the midair of the field. Not long after, the venue was covered with dark clouds, and raindrops fell. Rain Dance. Chen Qi looked up at the dark clouds and murmured softly. At this level of combat, it's rare to see a Pokemon use weather moves. Meadow. The air became extremely humid, and the raindrops fell on Metag's body. It only felt wet and a little uncomfortable, as if the speed had slowed down. Above the stands, Teacher Chin put his hands on his thighs, his eyes flickered slightly, and said in a deep voice, this move is not only aimed at Metang but also at Blaziken. The Rain Dance move will last for a long time. If Dragonair defeats Metag, then it will face the Fire-type Blaziken, and Rain Dance will be very useful. Secondly, the Rain Dance move has an effect on improving Dragonair itself. Lu Bin grinned and said without worry, I guess he won't see Blaziken anymore. This plan will definitely fail. During the discussion, Metang rushed in front of Dragonair at an astonishing speed of 12 degrees, and his long fist dragged out a bullet-like sharp white light, hitting Dragonair one after another, causing scars to appear on his body. Aqua Tail. Seeing this, Zhang Zihao hastily shouted. Oh! Hearing this, Dragonair's eyes froze, and he swung his dragon tail like a stormy sea, with a frightening momentum, and slapped Metang. Flash Cannon. Chen Qi said awe-inspiringly. Bright white light bloomed all over Metag's body, the white light gathered at one point in an instant, and shot towards Dragonair with a bang. Boom! Immediately, the water waves were choppy and turbulent, and the white light was bright and sharp. They collided with each other, energy and light waves were released, and huge shock waves spread layer by layer, setting off a cloud of dust and smoke. Zhang Zihao ignored the dust and smoke that obscured his vision. He had strong confidence in his Dragonair, and passionately shouted, Flamethrower. Psyshock. Chen Qi shouted. Boom. Before the dust and smoke dissipated, the second round of energy collision opened the Veilstone again, and the Flamethrower and Confusion light waves collided fiercely in the dust and smoke, blasting deafening explosions in the ears of countless audiences. Rush over and use Aqua Tail again. Zhang Zihao blushed and roared. Double team. Chen Qi said with calm eyes. The more passionate you are, the more calm you must be. The dust and smoke dissipated in time. Dragonair flew in midair, like a dancing normal, Dragon Tail rolled the waves, and suddenly slapped towards Matang. Rub rub rub. Metig separated countless clones in midair, occupying most of the field. Boom. The Dragonair flicked the aqua tail, the water surged and the momentum was astonishing, and several Metig clones were hit. Calm down, I'm real. Looking at this scene, Zhang Zihao's eyes flashed, he took a deep breath, and calmed down. Behind. In the next second, Zhang Zihao's pupils contracted and he exclaimed. The moment Dragonair heard the voice, he turned his head to look, but a saffron-colored iron fist had already appeared in sight, and it was getting bigger and bigger until it occupied the entire line of sight. Boom! Matang swung his fist and hit Dragonair right in the face. Suddenly, the powerful fist made Dragonair cry out in pain, and fell straight towards the ground. At this moment, countless audience members subconsciously sat up straight and stared wide-eyed. The final outcome seems to be coming out soon. Dragonair. Seeing the Dragonair falling straight down, Zhang Zihao stared at it, and shouted anxiously. Oh! Dragonair, who was originally in a trance, suddenly opened his eyes when he heard the voice of his trainer when the ground was less than 1 meter high, and immediately flew into the air again. It's just that the original holy body has already been scarred and pitiful. This, the power of the bond. Looking at the Dragonair that was supposed to fall, Chen Qi was slightly taken aback, thinking to himself. In the real Pokemon world, the bond power is mysterious, and it can burst into powerful power under certain special circumstances. Well, Chen Qi was lucky enough to meet him. But in the face of the absolute strength gap, it is useless. Seeing Dragonair flying again, Zhang Zihao secretly heaved a sigh of relief. With a slight smile on his face, he looked at Dragonair and shouted, Dragonair, let's use that trick together. Oh! Dragonair turned back, staring at Zhang Zihao quietly with dark eyes, then nodded slightly. That move, Dragonair, dive because of it. Zhang Zihao shouted with all his might. Is it actually Dragon Rush? Chen Qi's eyes flashed slightly, and he muttered in a low voice. Oh! Dragonair raised his head to the sky and howled, the 3 beads on his body glowed brilliantly. Suddenly, it rushed to the blue sky like a dragon, the dragon tail swayed gracefully, and when it flew to the highest point, a violent purple dragon shadow appeared, swooping down fiercely. The quasi-godly aura is undoubtedly revealed. With a smile on Chen Qi's face, he shouted, we resorted to take down. Matang, who was already eager to try, surged all the strength in his body, his head was shining with bright white light, and he faced the Dragonair who was rushing forward with a fierce momentum. Boom! Suddenly, 2 Pokemon had the most intense collision since the freshman exchange competition was held in midair. The violent energy light waves vented everywhere and the shock waves raised dust that obscured the vision. The huge roar continued for a long time, and the 2 Pokemon shrouded in dust and smoke temporarily disappeared. Finally, the venue returned to calm, and the dust and smoke gradually disappeared. Metig was the first to appear on the big screen, with faint traces remaining on its silver body, flying back and forth in midair. Everyone knows the final result. The same was true for Zhang Zihao. He looked down and saw that the originally beautiful and holy Dragonair was bruised, and collapsed on the ground powerlessly, his eyes turned into circles. He quickly ran into the arena, squatted down, with gentle eyes, and said softly, thank you, Dragonair. Dragonair incapacitated. Therefore, the winner is Chen Qi. The referee waved down the flag at the right time and blew the whistle for the end of the game. On the big screen, Zhang Zihao's profile picture suddenly went out. There was a brief silence at first. After a long while, the whole venue was boiling. Chen Qi enjoyed the cheers from all directions, then walked to the center of the field and shook hands with Zhang Zihao. Zhang Zihao didn't seem to be affected by this occasion. With a big smile on his face, he said, I won't lose in the College Student League 2 years later. 2 years later, Chen Qi suddenly felt a little dazed, but he still nodded and replied, come on. Since then, Veilstone has fallen to the top 8 of freshman exchanges. 3 players from Imperial University join hands to break into the semifinals, and the remaining one is Gong Ruonan. Since the establishment of the freshman exchange competition, there has never been such a situation. 3 players from the same university occupy 3 seats in the semifinals. The era of Imperial University dominance. The old senior of Imperial University burst into tears. I didn't expect the whole army of Shanghai University to be wiped out. Let me guess, the first is Chen Qi, and the second is Lu Bin. Look at the battle list first. Not long after the match between Chen Qi and Zhang Zihao ended, the list of battles for the semifinals was released. Lu Bin vs Shen Weiyue. Chen Qi vs Gong Ruonan. It's bad, the finals is a civil war at Imperial University. The coaching teacher of Modu University murmured. That's right, when they saw the roster for the semifinals, everyone knew that the finals would be a civil war at Imperial University. The championship trophy for this year's freshman exchange competition has been reserved by Imperial University in advance. When no one was optimistic about Gong Ruonan, she found Chen Qi. I want to challenge your Blaziken, Gong Ruonan said. Her eyes are very determined, her eyelashes are gently flicking, and her face is full of hope. Chen Qi smiled. He knew why Gong Ruonan insisted on challenging Blaziken. The scene of the fierce battle between Blaziken and Holochime have left an indelible impression on Gong Ruonan and Lucario. So he smiled and nodded, okay. Hearing this, Gong Ruonan raised her eyes to look at Chen Qi, then bowed slightly, turned and left. The coaching teacher from South Sichuan University greeted him immediately, and said, have you really decided? He knew that Gong Ruonan was a stubborn Stephanie, and if he had a decision in his heart, he would stick to it. But he still wanted to persuade her. Gong Ruonan looked at coaching teacher and said firmly, it's decided. Fighting against Blaziken is my greatest wish. The coaching teacher heard the firmness in Gong Ruonan's words, he sighed secretly and stopped persuading. Anyway, this year's Southern Sichuan University's grades are very good, enough for him to return with glory. Gong Hong also called Gong Ruonan. Are you confident against that kid? No, Gong Ruonan replied truthfully. Gong Hong was taken aback for a moment, then he waved his fist and said loudly, it doesn't matter if you don't have confidence, we martial arts practitioners are all about rampage. Just take Lucario and let that kid have a look at the results of your cultivation with Master Ji Yu Shi. In the afternoon, the venues for the competitive sports games in Shanghai were packed, and the supply of tickets for tens of thousands of people was in short supply, so there was a lot of water inside and outside the venue. As an elite-level competition, it is really rare to be able to arouse such great enthusiasm. The cheers in the venue were loud, and tens of thousands of spectators beat the cheer sticks rhythmically, looking up at the countdown on the big screen. Although the competition has entered the semi-finals and most of the schools have been eliminated, the students from these schools are still cheering for the players. At the same time, countless people in front of the TV are looking forward to it. As the countdown reached 0, the voice of host sounded. Everyone, welcome to the final stage of the individual competition of the freshman exchange competition. Host said loudly with enthusiasm. The two sides who are going to fight are Lu Bin and Shen Weiyue from Imperial University. Next, let's invite players from both sides to come on stage. Amid deafening cheers, Lu Bin and Shen Weiyue appeared on the stage at the same time. Lu Bin was wearing a slim suit, his hair was combed shiny, and with a confident smile on his face, he waved to the audience in all directions. Shen Weiyue's face was indifferent, she walked alone amidst the warm cheers, and stood silently on the command seat. Chen Qi stayed in the players' lounge, looking up at the TV, watching the performance of the two. For Imperial University, civil war is inevitable. As for Lu Bin facing Shen Weiyue, it was already the best result. In school, Lu Bin and Shen Weiyue are both members of the school team, and they often have friendly discussions, and the two win and lose each other. But now that the two are facing each other, no matter who wins the final victory, they will continue to move forward on behalf of Imperial Capital University. Secondly, there is not much suspense for Chen Qi to face Gong Ruonan, and Teacher Qin will definitely be able to meet the winner of the other side in the finals. In this way, the finals will evolve into a civil war at Imperial University. This is the perfect script. The battle started quickly, and Lu Bin sent Tyrant to deal with Shen Wei's espion. After a fierce battle, Tyrant won a tragic victory, and his strength was at stake. Shen Weiyue sent Gothorita to defeat Tyrant, and Lu Bin then sent her own trump card Pokemon Gabite. In several fierce confrontations, Gabite shouted to the sky, defeated Gothorita, and won the semi-final victory for Lu Bin. Since then, Lu Bin defeated Shen Weiyue and got close to the finals. Chen Qi looked up at Lu Bin on the screen, and his eyes reflected the scene of Lu Bin leaning against the wall a few nights ago, issuing a declaration of challenge to himself. Lu Bin did it. He successfully stood on the final stage, waiting to challenge Chen Qi. Chen Qi smiled, stood up, and prepared to go to the battlefield. Everyone, the short break is over. Next, please let us welcome the two contestants in the next match with the warmest applause. They are Gong Ruonan from South Sichuan University and Chen Qi from Imperial University. Amid the deafening cheers, host held the microphone in his hand and said passionately. Cheers resounded like a tidal wave outside. Chen Qi stood in the shadow of the contestants' passage with his eyes closed, and when he heard host's voice, he chuckled lightly. After a while, Chen Qi opened his deep black eyes, and the three pairs of eyes beside him looked forward. The slender Blaziken stood impressively beside Chen Qi. Standing behind Chen Qi is the silver Metatang and the swaying white dress Gardevoir, venting their super energy field to all directions. Chen Qi snapped his fingers, Metang and Gardevoir turned into a beam of red light and flew back to the Pokeball. Chen Qi glanced sideways at Blaziken beside him, nodded slightly, and then slowly walked out of the contestant aisle. The sun set and dispelled the shadow on his face. Chen Qi stood on the green field, with a smile on his face, and stretched out his hands to greet the audience in all directions. Blaziken stood beside him, his blue eyes kept scanning, attracting the attention of thousands of viewers. All of a sudden, several cameras were aimed at Chen Qi and Blaziken beside him, and the sound of shutters clicked one after another. In the front row of the audience, Chu Wei sat upright, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised, staring at Chen Qi on the field. Lu Bin folded his arms and grinned. Blaziken came out. There's a good show to watch. Countless spectators sat up straight, widened their bodies, and tried their best to look at Blaziken beside Chen Qi, wanting to observe further. In fact, there is no need to observe at all. The ability to evolve from Combusken to Blaziken has thoroughly proved its strength. Zhang Zihao looked at the calm Chen Qi, quietly clenched his fists, and said in a low voice, "Is this the Blaziken?" All players know that Chen Qi's biggest hole card is the Combusken that broke through to the elite level a month and a half ago. But at this moment, Combusken has evolved into Blaziken. How has its strength improved by leaps and bounds? Amidst the warm cheers, Ji Ruonan walked out slowly from the player passage on the other side. She was wearing a martial arts uniform, her eyes were firm and her face was calm. In the fighting gymnasium of Xuanbei City, a group of disciples stared at the big screen not far away with their horses striding. Sweat dripped from their foreheads, but they still cheered on. Although this little junior sister's own fighting attainments have already surpassed them. The two walked slowly to their respective command seats, looking at each other from afar. Looking at Chen Qi in front of her, Gong Ruonan's eyes flickered slightly, and she nodded slightly. "Thank you." Chen Qi grinned and said, "It's okay, Blaziken also fights Covet." Chat. Blaziken stood beside Chen Qi, a shallow flame sprayed out from his wrist. The two didn't speak anymore, waiting quietly for the referee to speak. At the same time, the entire venue began to gradually quiet down, and the noise gradually disappeared. The referee walked to the center of the field, looked around, and said loudly, "The rules are 2v2 full battle. If any Pokemon loses its fighting ability first, the game will end." After reading the rules, the referee looked around the two, held up the flag, and said, "Please take the players on both sides." Gong Ruonan held the enlarged Pokeball in his palm, ready to go. Blaziken stepped forward and approached the battlefield. Suddenly, the referee waved down the flag and said loudly, "Game start." The heads of Chen Qi and Gong Ruonan appeared on the big screen, and the VS logo flashed. Go. Gong Ruonan cast a Pokeball with a glint in his eyes. Onion Rangers. White light bloomed, and only the Rangers with snow-white fur, thick eyebrows and big eyes landed on the field. In the hand of the Onion Ranger, he holds a huge onion stick, and in the other hand, he holds a shield made of onion leaves. On its body, an awe-inspiring aura suddenly burst out, like a warrior who has experienced many battles. Pokemon. Onion Ranger Fighting. Ability. Indomitable Heart. Qualification. Master. Level. LV29 Senior. Seeing this, the commentator said loudly, "Contestant Gong Ruonan still sent Kong Yubing who played very well a few days ago. Evolved from the endangered Farfetch'd, the Onion Rangers have a calm personality and take fighting with dignity as their creed. As for Chen Qi, he should choose Blaziken, who has never played. This Blaziken is very popular on the internet, and countless netizens are speculating on its current specific strength. At this moment, on the stage of the semi-finals of the Freshman Exchange Tournament, Chen Qi finally dispatched Blaziken. After the words fell, Blaziken jumped lightly, jumped into the battlefield, and confronted the Onion Ranger on the opposite side. The battle has officially begun. Gah! The Onion Ranger with snow-white fur and sharp eyes is holding a fragrant onion stick and pointing at Blaziken. As a senior-level body, Yaya dares to take the initiative to initiate a taunt to Blaziken. By the way, if you cook this onion stick and Onion Ranger together in a pot, will the taste be more delicious? Looking at the Onion Ranger holding the onion stick, Chen Qi's thoughts began to diverge involuntarily. Thoughts flashed, the battle has officially started. First impression, Gong Ruonan said calmly. The Onion Ranger swung his long pole onion stick, and the wind blew away the grass clippings around him. The astonishing momentum made everyone present look sideways. Immediately afterwards, the Onion Ranger took a solid step and rushed towards Blaziken with courage. Duck 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 duck. This is first impression. The commentator specially invited by the competition committee adjusted the glasses and explained to the audience, it is the most powerful one among the pre-made moves. Let's see how player Chen Qi copes. What? Chen Qi didn't give a command. Accompanied by a puzzled light hey sound, Chen Qi stood quietly on the spot, his clothes fluttering, and he did not give a command. To be honest, with Blaziken's current strength, Chen Qi's command is completely unnecessary in the face of this level of battle. Chen Qi only needs to watch the battle silently from the sidelines, and leave the rest to Blaziken. Blaziken looked down at the imposing little man rushing towards him. His eyes were calm, and he stood there without moving, as if he was waiting for Gongyu County to arrive. Half an hour. Gah! The imposing little man swung his long pole onion stick, but before he could hit the onion stick, he was caught by Blaziken's claws. What? The onion stick of Onion Ranger was caught by Blaziken. The guide watched the scene, his eyes shrank, and he shouted passionately. Suddenly, the venue was in an uproar. The slow motion of the scene just now began to be played back on the big screen. Blaziken stood quietly at the same place, and when the onion stick was about to hit him, it stretched out its right paw and easily grabbed the onion stick. All this went very smoothly, as if the Onion Ranger handed over the onion stick on his own initiative. But the more this is the case, the more audiences can understand the horror of this Blaziken. This is a complete crushing of strength. A small detail reflects too many problems, and the actions of the Onion Rangers have nothing to hide in the eyes of Blaziken. Is this Chen Qi's real whole card? Field. Onion Yubing held the onion stick, felt the huge force continuously transmitted from the onion stick, and sweated profusely. The next second, Blaziken glanced at the Onion Ranger lightly, his right leg and knee glowed with a sharp white light, and immediately kicked the Onion Ranger. Onion Yubing was hit from the front, his abdomen was suddenly sunken, and immediately flew backwards like a kite with a broken string. 1 meter, 2 meters, 5 meters. Boom! Accompanied by the sound of dong, the Onion Ranger fell heavily to the ground. At this time its position was 2 meters away from the field. Onion Yubing didn't even have time to make a crack sound, the darkness swallowed his consciousness, and Yan Ran fell into a coma. A breeze blows. The venue was silent. Whether it was the audience present or countless netizens, they were all dumbfounded. Second. This is seconds. Wasn't this green onion soldier very strong a few days ago? Why did he disappear all of a sudden? Oh, it turns out that rival is Blaziken, that's okay. The commentator was also stunned, and after a long time, he slowly said. Cough. Chen Qi's Blaziken is a bit beyond my understanding of freshman exchange competitions. Let's take a look at the full game replay. Is it okay? Countless viewers came to their senses, looked up at the big screen, and watched the replay of the battle. From Gong Ruonan's order, the Onion Rangers rushed to Blaziken, and Blaziken grabbed the onion stick, and ended when Blaziken kicked the Onion Rangers into the air. It seems that there are 4 processes, but in fact the battles are all between spark, and the time is extremely short. In the end, the precise time of the match, 9.83 seconds, appeared on the big screen. Dead silence, only dead silence in the venue. Pei Qian, who was sitting with Zhang Zihao, looked up at the big screen, opened his mouth, and finally popped out 2 words. Awesome. Zhang Zihao was stunned for a long time. He was suddenly a little thankful that Chen Qi didn't choose to send Blaziken when he was fighting against Chen Qi. It's too fierce. Someone exclaimed. I declare that the post a few days ago is God. It's too foul for Blaziken with such strength to appear in the freshman exchange game, right? The referee, I will report someone cheating. All kinds of troubles seemed to have nothing to do with Gong Ruonin. She took out her Pokeball to take back the Onion Ranger, then lowered her head and smiled slightly. Thank you for your hard work. Immediately, Gong Ruonin raised his eyes and stared at Blaziken on the opposite side. His eyes flickered slightly, and seemed to recall the scene when Blaziken fought Halicha fiercely. Lucario, I'll leave it to you next time, she said softly. The fighting spirit in her eyes became more and more intense. She is Gong Ruonin, a person who practices martial arts, and a person who never backs down. Chuanan City, your school is also quite unlucky. Father Chen sighed slightly, turned his head and said. Chen Ma smiled slightly and replied, they are already amazing. Father Chen lay on the sofa and continued, yes, this result is already very good for South Sichuan University. Please, Lucario. In the boiling venue, Gong Ruonin's eyes were like knives, and his whole body was awe-inspiring, and suddenly threw the second Pokeball. The cover of the Pokeball was opened, a beam of red light fell to the ground, and the magnificent Lucario landed on the field. It raised its eyes and stared at Blaziken on the opposite side, and couldn't help thinking of some scenes in the past, and its face gradually became dignified. This battle is extremely difficult, but I will do my best. Come out. Gong Ruonin sent out the second Pokemon, and it's also the last Pokemon. Bird Guide Pokemon, Lucario. The passionate voice of the explainer sounded in the venue at the right time. As a super popular Pokemon, Lucario received warm cheers and applause as soon as he appeared on the stage. But at this time, Lucario was extremely serious and extremely cautious. It was about to face the strongest rival in history. Lucario, Gong Ruonin suddenly said. Lucario turned and faced his trainer. Come on, Gong Ruonin said again. Those 2 short words seemed to give Lucario infinite strength. It nodded heavily, and then turned to face Blaziken. Gong Ruonin took a deep breath, and a gleam shot out of her eyes in the next second. She and Lucario put on a uniform combat posture, waved her arms, and finally clasped her fists. Staring at Chen Qi, she said in a deep voice. Please enlighten me. Please enlighten me. Chen Qi was taken aback for a moment, and then a smile appeared on his face, and he also clasped his fists and replied. He didn't know if Master Ji Yushi would watch the game at this moment. They probably wouldn't watch it. After all, the freshman exchange competition is too insignificant in the eyes of people like Master Ji Yushi. The photographer quickly snapped this photo. In the photo, Chen Qi and Gong Ruonin looked at each other from a distance and clasped their fists at the same time. At the same time, 243 Imperial Capital Suburb. In the familiar log cabin, Master Ji Yushi looked at the 2 people who were fisting at the same time on the TV, stroked their beards, and showed a satisfied smile on their faces. Not bad. Chen Qi's Blaziken is making rapid progress. Master Ji Yushi has sharp eyesight, so he can see at a glance that Blaziken has made a lot of progress. When facing the Onion Rangers, he chose the most effortless, yet simple and direct way of fighting. There are no exaggerated movements, just a simple arm raising and kicking can defeat the Onion Yubing. To do this requires deep fighting skills. In the venue, seeing that the contestants on both sides were ready, the referee nodded slightly and said loudly, the match begins. In all fairness, Lucario is at an absolute disadvantage against Blaziken, and a tribute is strictly restrained. But what really determines the outcome of the game is the strength of Pokemon and the command of both sides. Close combat. Once the battle started, Gong Ruonin waved his fists, jump-kicked his feet, and shouted loudly. Hearing this, Lucario flew out like a whirlwind, approaching Blaziken at an astonishing speed. His fists glowed with sharp white light, and his momentum was unstoppable. Blaziken's gaze was fixed. He refused to give in to Lucario's awe-inspiring attack, and also chose to respond with close combat. Boom! The 2 Pokemon collided fiercely in an instant, with both fists and feet coming out together, and there was no fancy energy light wave, and the fists hit the flesh continuously soaring adrenaline. In an instant, Lucario's complexion sank. The sudden attack from Blaziken and the overwhelming strength made it gradually overwhelmed, and the decline appeared. Roar! With an unwilling roar, Lucario was directly sent flying. It performed a flexible backflip in midair, and then lightly landed on the ground. But the Lucario contest condition at this time was definitely not good, with obvious scars all over his body, and he kept panting heavily. On the other hand, Blaziken, with an ordinary face and unscathed body, seemed to be just doing a warm-up activity. Let's judge. It felt like Blaziken wasn't pulling out all the stops. This person is neither red nor out of breath, so he must not have used his full strength. Let us congratulate Imperial University in advance for winning the first and second places in the freshman exchange competition. While countless audiences were discussing, the commentator thought for a while and said, although Lucario still has some strength to spare, the overall situation is rapidly tilting towards Chen-Chi. The Blaziken contest condition is intact, making people wonder what its true strength is. In short, Mian Ruonin has reached the point of life and death. After the words fell, Gong Ruonin's eyes were sharp, and he shouted, "Quick attack!" Hearing this, Lucario stepped on the ground and ran towards Blaziken at a high speed. In the blink of an eye, he crossed half of the field, rushed in front of Blaziken, and waved his fists at Blaziken. But the next scene once again made countless audiences dumbfounded. Blaziken squinted his eyes, swung his sharp claws suddenly, and received Lucario's swift blow, which was almost impossible to react to. Quick attack, that is, take down to attack rival with lightning speed, and almost no Pokémon can react. But Blaziken reacted, stretched out its claws, and took the swift blow from Lucario. As if the scene was exactly the same as the previous battle, Blaziken took rival's blatant blow without making a fuss. Classic reenactment, someone murmured. Isn't it true that someone falls twice in the same place? At that moment, Blaziken lowered its eyes and looked at Lucario. Then it stared and kicked Lucario with its knees. What? In the next second, Chen-Chi let out a light snort. On the battlefield, Lucario also reacted quickly. At the first moment when Blaziken's knee was kicked out, he retracted his arms and turned to block Blaziken's knee attack. But it's one thing to react, and another to succeed. The knees were wrapped with amazing strength, which seemed like a mighty force, causing Lucario's complexion to suddenly change, and his arms lost their strength. All of a sudden, Lucario was kicked out by high jump kick just like the Onion Rangers. First he flew high into the air, and then he fell heavily to the ground like a falling meteor. Boom! A burst of dust and smoke was raised, and Lucario's figure was covered, making it impossible for everyone to see his figure. Gong Ruonin subconsciously clenched her fists, staring at the place filled with dust and smoke. The docent yells, Lucario got hit head-on with the high jump kick. It fell from midair and fell into the dust and smoke. The contest condition is unknown. After a while, the dust and smoke gradually dissipated, and the scene inside came into view. Lucario was bruised all over his body, his figure was shaky, and he stubbornly stood up from the ground. It raised its eyes and looked at Blaziken standing quietly not far away, its consciousness becoming more and more blurred. Lucario is a fearless warrior and an unyielding warrior. It has not fallen yet. Gong Ruonin opened his mouth, knowing that Lucario might fall down at any moment as if he was dying. Now it just stands stubbornly with one breath. Ever since, Gong Ruonin's eyes flickered, and he shouted, Lucario, you've come back from a desperate situation. Survive from a desperate situation, attack with all your strength, the lower the life value, the greater the power of the move. On the big screen, Lucario let out a heavy panting sound, its contest condition had slipped to the lowest point, dying. But after Gong Ruonin yelled this, its eyes suddenly lit up, and there were unyielding flames burning blazingly. This moment, the faith and determination of Gong Ruonin and Lucario merged into one, and they marched together to deliver the final blow to Blaziken. Roar! Lucario's eyes were sharp, and his breath was rising steadily, making countless audiences stare at him. In the next second, it stepped forward, like the last soldier trapped in the trench, launching a fearless charge. In an instant, Lucario charged in front of Blaziken. With an astonishing aura, he threw out his fists. Blaziken nodded slightly, as if responding to Lucario's courage. It suddenly focused, and then punched. All of a sudden, the fist wind was mighty and terrifying. Lucario hadn't even approached Blaziken completely, and hadn't even swung his last punch when he was enveloped by the terrifying fist wind and completely swallowed him. In an instant, the punching storm spread to the whole field, grass clippings flew across, and the shock wave spread in all directions. Not long after, the venue returned to calm. Even the huge venue, thousands of spectators fell silent, and watched Blaziken on the venue. This punch. Chu Wai was also a little dazed, and he murmured in a low voice. He suddenly felt that even if this punch hit a professional Pokemon, the latter would probably fall down in an instant. Thinking about it this way, Chu Wai only felt horrible. The strength of this Blaziken is becoming more and more unpredictable. I am afraid that it will have professional level strength before next year. Next year's college student league will be stable, he thought to himself. Field. Lucario fell on the green grass. His eyes had turned into circles, and he seemed to be in a coma contest condition. The referee looked down, and immediately raised the flag and said, "Lucario is incapacitated. The winner is therefore Chen Qi." Immediately, the venue was boiling, cheers and applause hit like a tide. Gong Ruonin took back the fallen Lucario silently, she bowed her head and said softly, "Thank you for your hard work." The Pokeball in his palm shakes slightly. Immediately, amidst warm cheers, Gong Ruonin walked to the center of the venue and shook hands with Chen Qi. "I have benefited a lot," Gong Ruonin said. Afterwards, she turned her head to look at the unscathed Blaziken beside Chen Qi, and said sincerely, "Thank you for your admonishment to Lucario." Chat. Blaziken smiled and waved his paw in a gesture of impoliteness. Gong Ruonin could tell that Blaziken never used his entire neck in the match against Lucario. Just like Master Ji Yushi, coaching Lucario normal, has always been able to do a job with ease. Well, did I say something wrong? When Chen Qi left the arena and walked into the player channel, he found that Lu Bin was waiting here at some point. He leaned against the wall, with a playful smile on his face, looking towards Chen Qi. Lu Bin, Chen Qi's last confrontation with the people. It was also his defeat twice. From time to time, deafening cheers erupted from the venue outside, causing the walls on both sides to rattle. Chen Qi stared at Lu Bin, chuckled lightly, and said, "What? Can't wait to be beaten." In the past few days, Chen Qi and Lu Bin lived in the same room, but they had established a fairly good friendship. Lu Bin folded his arms, his eyes were like burning golden sun, he stared at Chen Qi, and said, "It's not sure who beats who." Confidence in defeating Blaziken. Chen Qi walked up to Lu Bin and asked indifferently. Hearing this, Lu Bin's expression froze and he was at a loss for words. After a while, Lu Bin shook his head helplessly, looked at Chen Qi seriously and said, "To be honest, before I met Blaziken, I still had a little hope for myself. But I'm helpless. After meeting Blaziken, I know it's impossible to beat you." Speaking of this, Lu Bin couldn't help but said quietly, "You said that you are obviously a child of a superpower family, why is the trump card Pokemon a Blaziken?" Chen Qi thought about it seriously, and replied, "Because of fate. If it wasn't for fate, he wouldn't have met Blaziken, and Breeder wouldn't have produced this big devil who frightened all the players." Lu Bin shook his head again, sighed secretly, and immediately said seriously, "Anyway, this is the end of the matter, and I will fight with all my strength on the final stage tonight. Even if you are invincible." Although young people go forward bravely, they must also recognize the reality. At this stage, Gabite clearly had no chance of taking Blaziken's punch. He raised his eyebrows, his eyes seemed to be burning with the flame of fighting intent, and said in a deep voice, "Even if I lose to Blaziken, I will defeat Metang." Chen Qi remembered, it seemed that in the two battles with Lu Bin, he had not dispatched Blaziken. Metatang is enough to solve Lu Bin's Gabite. Thinking of this, Chen Qi showed a slight smile on his face, and he said, "Come on, I am optimistic about you." As night fell, the beams of searchlights illuminated the night sky. Beautiful fireworks bloomed in the night sky, the countdown began on the big screen, and thousands of spectators cheered in the competitive sports arena in Shanghai, and tens of thousands of netizens focused their attention on this. Countless netizens poured into the live broadcast room, and the popularity started to spread at an astonishing speed. Just here, who is the champion? Civil war at Imperial University. Chen Qi. I invite the next unlucky one. At the same time, Open-air large screens are set up on the campuses of various universities for all students to stop and watch. Tang Chi was swaying in the bar near Imperial University. When he saw that it was almost time, he bid farewell to his dance partner and left the bar in a hurry. Well, here it is. Randomly found an open-air viewing area, Tang Chi sat down and looked up. The auditorium was quickly filled with students coming and going. As students of Imperial University, everyone paid a lot of attention to this freshman exchange competition. Both Chen Qi and Lu Bin broke into the finals, which means that Imperial University has already booked the champion of this freshman exchange competition, and the champagne can be opened in advance. The same is true in Kunlun University. As a brother school of Imperial University, they are honored. I'm coming. In the girls' dormitory, Yang Yi brought over the prepared snack melon seeds, and sat in front of the computer with Chu Yunning. Chu Yunning was tapping the screen, as if typing. Hurry up, stop typing, the competition is about to start. Seeing this, Yang Yi couldn't help but look sideways, and reminded him aloud. But in the next second, Yang Yi saw the name of the person Chu Yunning was chatting with, and froze in place. Chen Chi, Chuanan City. Chen's father and Chen's mother were sitting on the sofa, and Delcatty was walking on the carpet, looking at the TV from time to time. Such a grand scene is much more spectacular than ours at that time. Chen Ma looked at the TV and sighed aloud. Father Chen nodded in agreement, and said with a smile, looking at these young people, I seem to think of myself in high spirits back then. You, Chen Ma rolled her eyes and said softly, you're high-spirited. Father Chen coughed dryly, and then replied, anyway, I am also the third place in the freshman exchange competition. Southwest Frontier. The vast night enveloped the earth, in a brightly lit building. A middle-aged man walked out quickly, came behind Chen Wei, and said softly, the finals will start soon. Chen Wei nodded slightly, without looking back, and said, I won't watch it. The middle-aged man was taken aback for a moment, hesitated for a while, and then said, but this is your grandson. Chen Wei lightly raised his right hand, causing the middle-aged man's voice to stop abruptly. He looked at the mountains not far away, and said in a low voice amidst the gusts of wind, the result of the competition is already doomed, there is no need to worry about it. It's these mountains that need my attention all the time. Magic City Competitive Sports Arena. Welcome to the finals of the freshman exchange competition. Amidst the warm cheers, the passionate voice of host sounded. Next, please give us the warmest applause to welcome both players into the arena. Without unnecessary nonsense, host shouted directly. Chen Qi was standing in the runner's tunnel, and when he heard host's voice, he walked slowly towards the green field in front of him. The walls on both sides thumped, and the roar of the mountains and the tsunami gradually became real and heated. Stepping out of the shadows, stepping on the green grass, the dazzling spotlights instantly enveloped it. Chen Qi raised his head and looked at the members of Imperial University who were cheering for him, at the players who sat in the front row and had a relationship with him once, looked at the enthusiastic audience in all directions. With a smile on his face, he waved his hand. Lu Bin also walked out of the player tunnel. His performance was even more exaggerated, smiling all over his face and waving vigorously. Amidst the gorgeous fireworks and the boiling venue, Chen Qi and Lu Bin walked to the center of the venue and shook hands with each other. The corner of Lu Bin's mouth was raised, with an unruly and confident smile on his face. He said, let's spend the championship moment together. Share the championship moment together. Chen Qi also laughed. At this moment, fireworks bloomed above the head, rendering the most splendid and magnificent background wall. Chu Yunning sat in front of the computer, looking at Chen Qi in the fiery trees and silver flowers. His clothes were swaying, and he was tall, like a handsome nobleman. Yang Yi shook Chu Yunning's body and kept saying, tell me quickly. How did you know each other? In the venue, both sides of the battle are players from Imperial University, and one side is the strongest freshman of Imperial University, even the strongest freshman among the students of this year's fighting department. Hearing this sentence, Chen Qi Dao was taken aback. Since he participated in the freshman exchange competition, he has never lost a single one. With a crushing posture, he defeated one rival after another, and finally stood on the stage of the finals. Chen Qi is without a doubt the legendary player of this freshman exchange competition. This kind of legend will even continue to the next session. Host's tone seems to be directly introducing the champion. But no one in the room questioned him. After watching every game of Chen Qi, everyone knew that he was bound to leave a strong mark in the previous freshman exchange games. Whether in the past or in the future, he is a legendary player. 3 elite Pokemon are enough for this kind of legend. The other side is Lu Bin, who also has a good performance. He and Chen Qi are both rivals and teammates. Both of them are close to the finals, and they are bound to put on a wonderful performance. Lu Bin listened intently, but after the host finished reading this sentence, there was no more words. He couldn't help twitching the corner of his mouth, feeling that the competition committee treated him and Chen Qi very differently. In any case, under the surging passion of host, everyone waited with bated breath. The searchlight illuminated the audience, and faint white spots flew up. The referee walked quickly to the center of the field to announce the rules of the game. When the rules were announced, he held up the flag, looked around the commanding seats on both sides, and said, "Please take your place." Chen Qi took the Pokeball from his waist and held it in his palm. Lu Bin grinned, gripped the Pokeball tightly, and made a baseball fling pose. The referee suddenly waved down the flag and shouted, "The match begins." The avatars of Chen Qi and Lu Bin appeared on the big screen, the VS logo appeared, and exciting music sounded. "Go, Tyrant!" Lu Bin threw the Pokeball. White light bloomed, and Tyrant roared wantonly, gnawing at the air. Tyrant's current level is 29, and he is also stuck before breaking through the barriers of the elite level. Chen Qi threw the Pokeball and said, "Please, Gardevoir." Gardevoir appeared gracefully on the field, with blue hair swaying, white skirt swaying gently, and scarlet eyes staring opposite. Gardevoir and Tyrant, old rival. In the second official battle between the two, Kirlia faced Tyrant, and Matang faced Gabite. Gardevoir. Staring at Gardevoir opposite, the corners of Lu Bin's mouth curled up quietly, blood began to boil all over his body, and he was full of fighting spirit. Oh, Chen Qi didn't choose to send Medig, but instead sent Gardevoir, who played well in the knockout round. The commentator shouted at the right time. Among countless people's guesses, Chen Qi's playing list is Metal plus Blaziken. Unexpectedly, Chen Qi's first Pokemon was Gardevoir. Gardevoir's beautiful eyes are slightly angry. "Who do you look down on?" All of a sudden, Gardevoir's eyes became more and more unfriendly, and Lu Bin's heart trembled with cold eyes, and an invisible and tyrannical super energy fluctuation began to brew. Suddenly, the two of them usually glanced at each other and issued an order at the same time. "Tyrant, crunch, Gardevoir, icy wind." When the words fell to the ground, Tyrant roared wantonly, swinging his moderately large body, opened his ferocious mouth wide, his fangs bloomed with sharp white light, and attacked Gardevoir directly. Gardevoir looked calm, waving his slender arms, and in an instant, an icy wind gathered, the temperature of his body dropped sharply, and he rushed towards Tyrant at the same time. Icy wind straddles the field. If Tyrant wants to attack Gardevoir, he must first avoid the blockade of the east wind, the commentator shouted. "Dig." Seeing icy wind approaching quickly, Lu Bin thought for a moment and said sharply, "Roar." Tyrant stopped attacking, turned to digging with his head down, dug out a deep hole in the blink of an eye, and then burrowed in, successfully avoiding icy wind. In the nick of time, Tyrant dodges the icy wind. The docent yells. On the field, Gardevoir looked around, but there was no sign of Tyrant. Chen Qi's eyes were clear, and he said calmly, "Try to cover the entire venue with Psychic." "Oh." Gardevoir responded lightly, and immediately closed his eyes. In the next second, the super energy surged in all directions like flowing water, covering the entire venue in an instant. Looking at this scene, Lu Bin suddenly had a bad premonition. He frowned slightly, and said in a serious voice, "It's now." Click. Suddenly, the ground under Gardevoir's feet was suddenly sunken, and Tyrant from the ground appeared. Gardevoir still closed his eyes, as if he had been prepared for a long time. An invisible wave of super energy rose from the ground in an instant, covering Tyrant. Like an invisible big hand, it tightly controlled Tyrant's body, making it unable to move at all. Father Chen saw this scene, nodded thoughtfully, and said, "The psychic in Gardevoir's body is a bit beyond my imagination. Not only can it cover the entire field in a short time, but it can even instantly control Tyrant, who suddenly bursts out. Not bad." Chen Ma nodded in agreement. "Breeder is very good." Field. Gardevoir suddenly opened his scarlet eyes, and a tyrannical wave of super energy surged out of his eyes, and the endless blue light quickly occupied Tyrant's entire field of vision, completely swallowing it. Tyrant! Lu Bin shouted. With a plop, Tyrant was released by the invisible big hand and fell to the ground. Looking closely, there was no scar on the surface of Tyrant's body, it just closed its eyes quietly. What? Gardevoir looked at the fallen Tyrant, standing silently with sparkling red pupils. Tyrant is incapacitated. The referee raised the flag and shouted. Lu Bin was stunned for a moment, then lowered his eyes and murmured, "Why does it feel easier than last time? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more."